Chapter 138. The thing that he had discussed with Mo Shaowan became the second thing that Yang Yi had hidden from Murphy. Well, it didn't matter if he had too many debts. It didn't matter if he hid one or two things from her. As long as he didn't do anything wrong to Murphy or his own conscience, Yang Yi could still face it calmly. Yang Yi didn't have to worry too much about this. He basically left it to Mo Shaowan, and he only had to pay for it. Yang Yi liked to leave professional things to professionals. But there were some things that Yang Yi had to do even if he wasn't a professional. For example, building a nest for the new kittens in the house, building a cat tree. Because there were 3 kittens, the cat tree that Yang Yi and the others chose was relatively large. In its original form, it looked like a building in Monument Valley. But before it was assembled, it was just a piece of plank, a tube of cardboard wrapped with hemp rope, and a piece of flannelette. What Yang Yi needed to do was to assemble it in a corner of the living room for the owners to play with in the future. There is no justice. A cat can enjoy such luxurious treatment. Yang Yi sighed secretly. He was tying the soft flannelette hammock. There were a total of 3 hammocks on the cat tree. Some were tied low, and some were tied high, but they were all like swings, swaying. Yang Yi felt that if he became a cat, like Zheng Tan, sleeping in a hammock with his paws under his belly and his eyes closed, it would be very comfortable. On the cat tree, there was a small house similar to the Great Wall. It had openings on both sides and was at a medium height. It was said that cats like to climb into these small dark houses, and the smaller they were, the more they liked to climb into them. At the very top, there was a platform for cats to jump onto. In winter, they could install cat nests made of flannel. That way, they could jump up step by step and nestle comfortably, looking down at the poop scoopers with disdain. However, although Yang Yi was secretly muttering about these cats' good lives, he still welcomed their arrival in his heart. Because Murphy and she were very happy. Meow meow, meow meow. 2 strange meows, one big and one small, were heard, but they weren't meows of kittens. Instead, it was Mo 3-year-old and she 4-year-old who were playing with the kittens in the corrugated cardboard box. Mom, can I hug the kittens? She's 2 big eyes seemed to twinkle like little stars as she looked at the kittens happily. Sure. Murphy gently pulled apart the kittens that were huddled together and took out her favorite one. The remaining 2 kittens saw that their companions had been picked up, so they raised their heads and meowed. No one knew if they were meowing, worried about their companions, or envious of their companions' treatment. They also wanted to be picked up and touched by the poop scooper. She stood up nervously. Although she had been looking forward to hugging the kitten, when it was time to do it, the little girl was a little scared and nervous. I'm scared. She was so anxious that she wanted to cry. She stamped her feet and said to her mother, "Don't be scared. The kitten is very gentle. Come, sit down first." Murphy smiled as she guided the little girl. You use both hands like Mom and hug it under its armpits. She did as she was told. Although the little girl was so nervous that her body was stiff when the kitten was handed to her by her mother, the kitten stayed in her arms obediently and even turned its head to look at her flexibly. She was very happy. Mom, look, it's not scared. She said happily. Of course, she still didn't dare to move at all. Of course, it likes you very much. Murphy said with a smile. Then, Murphy taught she how to stroke the kitten. Use one hand to hug its stomach, then use your right hand to scratch its head, especially behind its ears, and here, under its neck. Murphy smiled. Look, it likes it when you touch it like this. She used her little finger to gently scratch the kitten behind its ears. The kitten was so comfortable that it closed its eyes. How do you know it likes it? She asked, a little confused. Look, its tail is already up and swaying gently. This means that it feels very happy and is acting coquettishly with you. Murphy said with a smile. Note 1. The mother and daughter played with the kitten for a while. She couldn't hold it for too long, so she handed the kitten back to her mother and played with the other 2 kittens. But at this time, Murphy suddenly thought of something. She smiled and shouted in the direction of Yang Yi. Yang Yi, come here. Maybe Murphy was afraid of scaring the kitten, so she didn't shout very loudly, or maybe Yang Yi didn't hear her because of the noise from the TV. Yang Yi was busy assembling the cat tree and didn't move. She, go and call your papa over. Murphy held the kitten and pointed to her daughter. She reluctantly looked away from the kitten. She ran over and shouted like her mother, Yang Yi, come here. Hearing her daughter call him that, Murphy chuckled. Her smile was like a flower. Yang Yi was pulled over by his daughter in confusion. As he walked over, he said, Cece, Daddy told you to remember. Every time you finish playing with a kitten, you have to wash your hands, and you have to wash them with soap. Murphy patted the space beside her and asked Yang Yi to sit down. In fact, it was a little dirty to sit directly on the ground, but Yang Yi still sat down. She saw this and quickly squeezed between her father and mother. She sat down close to them, forcing Yang Yi to move his but to make some space. Otherwise, the little guy would be squashed. There are 3 kittens here, Murphy said with a smile. She, me, and you. The 3 of us, each name a cat we like, okay? Okay. She raised her hand excitedly. She pointed to the smallest one in the box and said, I like it the most. I want to call it Xiao Guai. She had just held the biggest one, but she still felt that it was too heavy and didn't like it. The smallest one felt the best, and it was the most docile in She's hands. It lay there obediently and let the little girl touch it. Such an obedient kitten should be called Xiao Guai. Murphy nodded. She combed the fur of the kitten in her arms and said excitedly, Then I want to name this one. It's called Little Gray, because its fur is grayish-blue. Then why not call it Little Gray, or Big Gray Blue? Because it was the biggest of the 3 kittens. Yang Yi secretly criticized Murphy's naming skills, but he didn't have time to think too much. Murphy was urging him to name the remaining kitten. She also looked at her father with her eyes wide open. She was very curious about what her father would name it. Yang Yi actually couldn't think of a name, but he couldn't persuade Murphy. Moreover, this was a big event for the whole family. Yang Yi couldn't find an excuse to avoid it. He still had to seriously consider how to name it. Yang Yi picked up the remaining kitten and tried to touch it. It was a soft little guy, and its fur was actually very soft. Looking at it opening its pink little mouth to meow at him, Yang Yi unexpectedly found that he actually quite liked this feeling. Kittens were the cutest. So, what name should he give it? Note 1. Cats are different from dogs. When a cat wags its tail widely, it means that it is very anxious. When it wags its tail slightly, it means that it is interested in something. If it wags its tail to its owner, it means that it trusts the owner very much and is acting spoiled. Chapter 139. What should he name it? Of course, he couldn't name it Black Charcoal. Yang Yi didn't want to be like his daughter and Murphy, who were so bad at naming things. If he wanted to name it, he had to name it something deep. After some careful consideration, Yang Yi finally had an idea. Yang Yi gently stroked the kitten's head and smiled. I want to call it Duo Duo. Duo Duo? How much is Duo Duo? Murphy asked in surprise. No, it's Duo Duo next to the word mouth. Yang Yi shook his head. There's still a lot of Duo Duo next to the word mouth. Murphy giggled and looked at Yang Yi proudly. Her eyes seemed to be saying, I've seen through you. Murphy didn't know Yang Yi too well. She knew that Yang Yi liked the number Asher. She knew that 2 kittens were a pair, and there were 3 kittens, so there was obviously one more. So it was called Duo Duo. No, it was Duo Duo. This late-stage OCD patient still wanted to cover it up. Yang Yi's thoughts were exposed. He stared at her helplessly and amusedly. What should he do? Yang Yi wanted to tell Murphy, a woman like you who knows too much would have been killed in the past. Murphy stared back fearlessly with a smile in her eyes, as if to say, You're still threatening me? You've got guts. But at this time, she had something to say. The little girl pouted and said, No, Papa can't call it Duo Duo. Why not? Yang Yi asked, puzzled. Murphy was also a little surprised. Because it's different from the names Mom and I named it. She named it Xiao Guai, Mom named it Xiao Guai, and Papa named it Xiao Guai. She said. Murphy rolled her eyes at Yong Yi again, which made Yong Yi confused. What's wrong? Little did he know that Murphy was suspecting that she had been living with her father for so long that she had developed an obsessive-compulsive disorder. Even when she came up with names, she couldn't break the cue. This won't do. It's all right. Everyone can come up with their own names. Murphy comforted her daughter and smiled. This is the rule. So, the kitten that your papa likes is called Dodola. This would not do. If she really had the tendency to have obsessive-compulsive disorder, she would have to change it and get used to being disorderly and asymmetrical. It turned out that she did not have obsessive-compulsive disorder. She thought about it carefully and felt that her mother's words made sense, so she nodded and said, "All right then." Xiao Guai, and Xiao Guai, the three British Shorthairs who were curiously looking at their new environment, were going to settle down in Yong Yi's house. Fatty, call 2 people over to help me move the props. In the film and television base in the northern suburbs of Beijing, a little fatty in fake armor stood up and called 2 acquaintances over. He walked over to a young man who had a pen in his ear and was waving a hard folder in his hand, ordering the extras around. "Brother Bin, we're here," the little fatty said with a smile. "If you need anything, just tell us what to do." The young man nodded with satisfaction, but he wouldn't be nice to the little fatty because of this. He waved his hand and said, "Go, go, go, bring that box of props and let today's extras change into them." Okay. Although it was a hot day and he was sweating profusely, the little fatty still diligently went to move the things. This was Guazi. He had only been in Beijing for a few days, but with his eloquence and diligence, he had already stood out from the rest of the extras who could only lie down. He was now a senior extras who could stand up and even have a few scenes. While moving the things, his companions whispered into Guazi's ear, "Xiao Gua, why do you think Big Bin is working so hard today? He usually doesn't have such a loud voice." These companions were all older than Guazi, but not by much. They were all mountain children who didn't go to university and came to Beijing to work. Later, they found out that playing extras could be quite profitable, so they came to Beijing to pass the time. Their personalities were simple and honest, and their IQ was also the simple type. When they saw that Guazi didn't mind their Mandarin accent and didn't mind that they were from the countryside, they started to play together. In addition, Guazi was quick-witted and had ideas. After taking them on a few trips, they were able to grab good scenes. Thus, they faintly regarded Guazi as their leader. Of course, they still called him Xiao Gua, and Guazi didn't mind. "I heard that a big director came here today to shoot the main character's scene, so he worked a little harder. He wanted the big director to see his hard work." Guazi curled his lips. "Oh." His companions understood and looked at Guazi with admiration. They felt that he was really amazing to be able to find out such big news. In fact, they didn't bring their own ears and treated playing extras as idling. When they were resting, they really hid under the shade of the trees and lay down like corpses. Guazi stayed in the sunniest place, but he was able to eavesdrop on the conversations of a few special personnel or small supporting roles. Who knew how much information he had gathered in the middle of it? Not long after, there was a commotion on the set. Other than those useless extras, the other actors and staff ran over eagerly. "Director Chen, you're here? Teacher Chen, you've worked hard. It's such a hot day. Director Chen, look at this." Those who greeted him, those who tried to curry favor with him, and those who reported their work actively rushed to talk. It was as noisy as a market. Guazi also looked at him from afar with a few of his friends. Of course, they didn't dare to go up. "How impressive," one of his companions said enviously. "If only I could be like him." Another one of his companions also muttered, imagining the scene of him being surrounded by a large group of people. Guazi was also muttering, but he wasn't envious. Instead, he lamented, "Director Chan Fengchen. When can I act for him? It'll be great. Extras don't count. I have to be the male lead." That's right, it was Chen Fengchen. Today, Old Master Chan was dressed in a much more energetic and imposing manner than when he was in the bookstore. He wore a round-necked shirt with a black leather jacket and black sunglasses under his bowler hat. If it weren't for his white beard, it would be impossible to tell his age. People relied on their clothes and temperament. The old man had both today, so his aura was naturally more like a great director's. Okay, stop hanging around here. Do what you need to do. Old Lou, see if the preparations are done. I'll give you 15 minutes. We'll start shooting in 15 minutes. Chen Fengchen was indeed a great director, but his temper was also very bad. He didn't give them any face as he yelled. However, the effect was particularly good. In an instant, everyone left. Chen Fengchen sat on his own director's stool. No one dared to sit next to him. They wanted to be more diligent, so they ran past him from time to time. However, Chen Fengchen didn't even look at them. He was thinking about something with a frown. He had read the 2 books, Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword, and he liked them very much. Just by reading the books, he already had the image of a TV show in his mind. The experienced director Chan was keenly aware that these 2 works were particularly suitable for a TV show, so he couldn't wait to contact the publishing house to discuss the copyright with the author. However, he didn't expect the response he got was that the author couldn't leave and could only wait until September to come to Capital to discuss with him. Chen Fengchen didn't blame Yang Yi. After all, Yang Yi had shown enough respect. He said he would come to Capital. However, he was anxious. Although the world didn't lack literary works, good stories, and good scripts, one thing remained unchanged. Good things would always be coveted and fought over by many. These 2 books had been on the market for some time, and they were in the limelight. Chen Fengchen couldn't guarantee that other directors and companies didn't take a fancy to these 2 books. In the face of cruel market competition, Chen Fengchen's seniority was obviously useless no matter how old he was. If he waited until September, it would be too late. Chen Fengchen was thinking about this problem while waiting for filming to start. No, I can't wait. If he doesn't come, can't I take the initiative to look for him? I'm definitely going to get this copyright. Chapter 140. It was another morning. Zhongqing, a small city in the south, was slowly awakened by a warm song. A small city in the south. Time passes slowly. Every time I come back here, you are so peaceful. Yang Yi was humming to Murphy's guitar accompaniment. Although it was a warm song, his voice was still slightly heavy. This was the first time they woke up in the morning to practice singing. Of course, how could Murphy wake up earlier than Yang Yi? Yang Yi would always go out in the middle of the night to run, practice, and buy groceries before waking her up from her deep sleep. They didn't go anywhere. After closing the bedroom window, the 2 of them went to the balcony. Murphy leaned against the railing of the balcony while Yang Yi stood against the wall. He looked at the sun shining through Murphy's hair, which was blown up by the wind and dyed golden. They had to start singing in the morning. After some practice, Murphy asked Yang Yi to sing a song first. Yang Yi didn't know many songs in this world. He chose A Small Town in the South, that Guazi had performed for him before. Surprisingly, Murphy liked this kind of jazz ballad and was very familiar with this song. Therefore, she snatched the guitar and took the initiative to accompany Yang Yi. I'll sing this song alone here. You won't know. Yang Yi finally finished singing. He was still a little intoxicated. It felt good to sing to himself, however. Murphy shook her head and mercilessly said, Yang Yi, your voice isn't suitable for singing this kind of song. Ah! Yang Yi was dumbfounded. Your voice belongs to the tenor category. If you sing a high-pitched song, you might be able to control it more easily. However, you can't sing A Small Town in the South. Your voice is very deep and heavy. You won't be able to sing the refreshing ballad, Murphy explained patiently. Yang Yi knew about this. Back when he was in the army, his body was always the loudest when he shouted. But Yang Yi didn't like high-pitched songs. Many high-pitched songs were mainly about showing off. How could they convey emotions and reveal true feelings? Take the folk songs that Yang Yi liked as an example. How many of them required him to raise his head and use a very penetrating high-pitched voice to express his feelings? How can I widen my vocal range? Yang Yi thought for a while and asked Murphy, "Your voice is very good. Isn't it reported that your voice can cross 3 octaves? You know about this?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Among her songs, there were no high-pitched songs that required her to release so much energy. However, there was once a music program where she accepted the challenge arranged by the host and really sang an octave across the stage. But there's no harm in telling you. I can indeed sing 3 octaves. But this is on the basis of an innate wide vocal range and practice. Murphy smiled and said, "My mother knows music very well. So when I was young, she found that my voice was very good. So she made me do a lot of special practice. Your voice is basically fixed now. It's very difficult to change it through practice." Murphy hesitated for a moment, but still told Yang Yi the cruel truth. After all, he was an old man in his 30s. Yang Yi smiled bitterly. Murphy comforted him. "But it doesn't matter. Singing a song well has nothing to do with your vocal range. It has to do with the quality of your voice. Yang Yi, your voice is very good. It's bright and clear. If you sing a suitable song, it will have a good effect." Yang Yi frowned slightly and said, "If I want to sing this song well, is there no other way except to change to another song? Could it be that after rebirth, he could only listen to the songs he liked?" Yang Yi was not reconciled. Murphy shook her head and said with a smile, "You misunderstood me. And your own thinking is also wrong. To sing a song well, do you have to sing it according to the original singer's style? Even in this small town in the south, you can change to a style that you can control. You don't have to deliberately imitate Chow Fong. Try more, you can always sing other people's songs with your own flavor." Murphy felt that her words alone were not convincing enough. She picked up the guitar again, gently plucked the strings, and said, "I'll sing a part. Listen to it. The small town in the south is not bright. Every time I come back here, I feel calm." Murphy's ethereal voice sounded, but it stopped abruptly after just a part. "This is the original version." Murphy stopped and said to Yang Yi. Then, she played a short prelude and continued to hum. "Hey!" Yang Yi's ears were still very sharp. He could hear that Murphy's rhythm suddenly became lively. Although it was still the original voice, Yang Yi seemed to feel that if he closed his eyes and listened, he would feel that the singer was a girl who loved to laugh. Her voice was less sad, more lively, and not too sweet. It was just right. Note 1. But unfortunately, Murphy also sang a part and then stopped. She then changed to another style of singing. But this time, the rhythm was basically the same as the original version. But Murphy's voice was lower, slightly hoarse, and the vicissitudes of life hit the face. Note 2. How is it? Does it mean that the same song can have a different feeling when sung in different ways? Mo Fei said to Yang Yi with a smile. Well. Yang Yi wanted to say something but stopped. Murphy still saw it and said, "If you have any doubts, just say it. What's there to be embarrassed about?" Yang Yi's old face was slightly red. He pointed to the guitar and said, "Can you sing again? Just use your second style of singing. I think it's pretty good." Murphy naturally satisfied his request. Her slender fingers plucked the strings and she sang with a light rhythm. "I'm here singing this song by myself. People just smile, oh smile." Yang Yi listened silently. He could hear that in the second smile, Murphy was somewhat wantonly displaying her talent and singing with a playful flavor. At the same time, he saw Murphy's smiling eyes. It was like the canal behind her sparkling under the morning sun, as if there was a soft autumn wave flowing. Yang Yi thought of a poem that wasn't really a poem. Instantly beautiful eyes flowed with flowing water. Words and laughter were inseparable. Note 3. Perhaps, the woman who was written by Tao Yuanming and sang with him was also as intelligent and beautiful as Murphy? With so many thoughts running through his mind, Yang Yi also forgot to hide it. Mo Fei's cheeks blushed because of his infatuated gaze, and she even sang a little off-key in the end, but she didn't notice it, and Yang Yi didn't notice it either. "Well, it's your turn to listen to me sing. Help me see if there's anything I need to improve." After Murphy finished singing, in order to hide her heart that was beating like a deer, she pretended to be serious as she shook the stack of manuscripts in her hand and said. She also wanted to practice the song that Mu Xiong wrote for her. The night before, when she sang In My Voice, Murphy unexpectedly received some good suggestions. So, Murphy felt that Yang Yi still had his own unique talent in music. "That's not a problem." Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and said confidently, "Note 1, if you want to feel the tube, you can go to a small town in the south of cloud music and listen to the version sung by a singer named Shiyu. Note 2, everyone listen to Li Wenxiong's version. Note 3, this poem came from Tao Yuanming's Ode to Leisure. It means that, when looking around, beautiful eyes flowed with autumn waves, sometimes smiling and speaking without distracting the mind of playing the music. There was a saying that this was written for Di Shi, whom he married after his wife died. Di Shi was a virtuous woman and had the same interests as Tao Yuanming. They could endure hardships, the husband plowing in front, the wife hoeing behind. Chapter 141. It was the last 10 days of August, and Zhongqing Media University was getting more and more lively. Students who went home for the holidays were coming back one after another. Ding Xiang was one of them. She spent the summer working, but she took time to go home to visit her grandmother who had suddenly fallen ill. She didn't stay for long. She reunited with her grandmother for 2 days, then hurried down the mountain and rushed back to Zhongqing. Back at school, Ding Xiang sat alone in the dormitory and breathed a sigh of relief. But she didn't dare to slack off. She took off her shirt, opened the tightly sewn needle and took out the 4,000 yuan note that she had been carrying all the way back. She wanted to take the money back to bring her grandmother down the mountain to the city for a checkup and treatment, but her grandmother refused, saying that the barefoot doctors in the village were better than those outside. Of course, Ding Xiang knew that her grandmother didn't want to waste the money that her granddaughter had worked so hard to earn. But Ding Xiang couldn't persuade her grandmother. Seeing that her grandmother seemed to be in better spirits after drinking a few bowls of black herbal medicine, she had to take the risk and bring the money back to school. Don't ask why she didn't deposit the money in the bank. How could there be a bank in the mountains? And on the way back, there were all kinds of people in the cars and trains. Who knew if there were pickpockets staring at you? Ding Xiang didn't dare to reveal the huge sum of 4,000 yuan. She held it in her arms all the way back to school, and only dared to take it out. In front of the school ATM, Ding Xiang deposited the money into her card, but the girl's eyes were filled with worry. With the money she had saved from her job in the past year and the scholarship, Ding Xiang had enough for the next school year's tuition fees. But it was just enough. Suddenly going home to visit her grandmother, the unexpected expenses of the car fare and expenses made Ding Xiang feel strapped for cash. The balance shown in the ATM was 8,102 yuan. Including the pitiful dozens of yuan in her wallet, Ding Xiang's entire fortune was less than 8,200 yuan. That was to say, after the school deducted 8,000 yuan from her tuition fees at the beginning of the next month, she would be left with very little money. It was simply not enough to cover the next month's food expenses. What should I do? She took out the bank card and carefully put it away. The tanned and thin Meow girl was worried. She definitely had to find a part-time job to earn money, but the problem was that part-time workers were also paid monthly for their services. How could Ding Xiang survive until the day when the money would be distributed a month later? Do you want to see if there are any temporary jobs available? Ding Xiang pondered as she walked towards the dormitory. Although it's a little hard and the pay is less, at least we can get through this difficulty first, right? Ding Xiang. At first, Ding Xiang was preoccupied with her own thoughts and didn't pay attention to it. She only heard it when the person shouted a few times. She turned around and saw a short-haired, fair-skinned girl running towards her. Ding Xiang hid the sadness in her heart and smiled brightly, revealing her white teeth. "Senior Sister Mao. Sorry, I didn't hear you." "It's okay." Mao Peifu waved her hand indifferently and asked, "Ding Xiang, when did you come back?" How is Grandma's condition? Are you all right? I'm fine. I just got back to school, Ding Xiang said. Although her skin was a little dark, she was full of smiles, giving people a positive and cheerful feeling. Mao Peifu smiled and said, "That's good. All right, this year's welcoming ceremony is about to start. Can you come over tomorrow and help me?" Mao Peifu was the new vice president of their school's student union. Last year when Ding Xiang just came to school, she was the one who volunteered to welcome the new students. She had a good relationship with the new students and liked the hardworking Ding Xiang from the bottom of her heart. She had always wanted to bring Ding Xiang into the student union, but unfortunately, Ding Xiang was busy working to earn her school fees and living expenses after school, so she didn't have time to participate in student activities. But if there was a chance, Mao Peifu would often bring Ding Xiang to participate in some paid activities. On one hand, it was to let her junior sister earn some extra money. On the other hand, she sincerely hoped that Ding Xiang could gain more experience and make more connections. But this time's welcoming ceremony didn't have any remuneration. Mao Peifu was really too busy and the student union didn't have enough manpower, so she wanted to ask Ding Xiang to help organize it. This was something that Ding Xiang had agreed to 2 months ago. At that time, Ding Xiang didn't expect that her grandmother would suddenly fall sick. Okay. Ding Xiang agreed. How could she go back on her word when she had promised someone? But this way, she wouldn't be able to do her part-time job during the day. Yang Yi, come and take a look at this kindergarten. What do you think? Murphy held a stack of flyers in her hand and walked to the door of the study room. She called out to Yang Yi, who was quietly reading a book. After the conversation with Mo Shaowan, he had an additional burden of earning money on his shoulders. So Yang Yi had been thinking about what new book he wanted to start. However, now that he had an answer, Yang Yi needed to add some relevant knowledge. After all, this time, he was no longer copying the entire book. Instead, he was using his own writing to adapt the video story into a book without any reference. Murphy, on the other hand, was very busy. She asked someone to get a big box of kindergarten flyers and decided to do a good selection to ensure that her daughter could enter a kindergarten that was satisfactory to her. Of course, this satisfactory referred to Murphy's own satisfaction. What's so special about this? Yang Yi put down the book in his hand and followed Murphy to the living room. She was sitting next to the cat bed. She was playing with her Xiao Guai and the other 2 kittens with the cat teaser that her father had bought. In front of the cat teaser was a small cloth bag that was made into the shape of a mouse. Then, a clump of furry artificial feathers appeared behind the cat teaser. It was very sturdy. The staff was right. No matter if it was a big cat or a small cat, they had no resistance to the cat teaser. She shook the cat teaser left and right. The 3 kittens also shook their little heads left and right. Then, as long as one of them jumped out and scratched, the other 2 would definitely follow suit. Giggle. She was playing more happily than the kittens. She couldn't stop giggling. Yang Yi and Murphy shook their heads. They didn't want to disturb the little girl's fun. They went to study the kindergarten. This kindergarten is bilingual, and it's relatively close to Zhongqing Media University. It'll be very convenient for you to pick up Shi, Murphy said. Originally, Murphy wanted Shi to go to kindergarten in the wealthy district of Binhai. But later, she considered that Yang Yi would need some time to drive to Binhai, and it would be very troublesome in the future. So, Murphy took a step back and tried to choose the nearest kindergarten. Yang Yi looked at the flyer. He frowned and said, "This kindergarten said that they will hire college students to teach the children part-time? It's not a full-time kindergarten education. Isn't this misleading the children?" No. That's good. College students have a wide range of knowledge and solid English skills. She can learn a lot from them. Murphy laughed. However, when he heard her praising the college student, Yang Yi fell silent. Chapter 142. She was so happy these days. She had Papa, Mom, and 3 new friends at home. She felt as if her heart was soaked in honey every day. It was always sweet. And before the 3 kittens came, What she looked forward to the most every day was waiting for her father to tell her the story of the monkey at night. It would be best if he could play with the Jingu Bang for a while. By the way, after listening to Sun Wukong's story, she asked her father curiously one morning, "Papa, why can't she learn the Jingu Bang like Sun Wukong?" Yang Yi answered her like this: "The Jingu Bang is for boys to play with. It's so rude. The sword she learned is a girl's sword. Dad named it the Jade Girl Sword Technique. He learned it from a master named Xiao Longnu. After she learned it, it looks better than the Jingu Bang. It's soft and agile, elegant and graceful, just like a little fairy." So do you want to be a little fairy or a little monkey? I want to be a little fairy. She chose the former without hesitation. After the arrival of the 3 kittens, the attractiveness of her father's story seemed to have decreased a lot. Although Cici still wanted to listen to her father's story before she went to sleep, she usually wouldn't pester her father to tell her stories. Instead, she would go to the kittens whenever she had the chance. "Xiao Guai, you have to get it this time." She murmured and lowered her voice, as if she only wanted her Xiao Guai to hear her. She raised the cat stick high, but it was too high for the kittens to reach. They could only look up at it. The biggest kitten, Little Gray, tried to stand on its hind legs. It tried to grab it with its front legs, but of course, it could not reach it. Besides, the kitten's limbs were not strong enough. It struggled for a while before it gave up and squatted with the other kittens. 1, 2, 3. Shishi's voice was crisp and clear, as if the kittens could understand her. She repeated the number until 3, and then she put down the cat stick that was shaking left and right. She threw the whole cat stick on the ground. Although she was used to being with kittens, she was still a little timid when she saw their sharp teeth. It was still Xiao Hui who was strong. He was the first to stand up and use both of his claws to push the small rat-shaped bag to the ground. Then, he opened his small mouth and tried his best to gnaw on it. Dodo's movements were a little slower, but with the advantage of its body, it jumped and snatched the position. It followed beside Little Gray, baring its sharp teeth and biting its furry feathers. Xiao Guai was slower. It couldn't grab it, and it couldn't squeeze past the 2, brother cat, and sister cat. It could only circle around anxiously. In the end, it chose to use its little paws to push the long plastic stick. However, obviously, the plastic stick was not as tempting as the feathers and the small bag, so Xiao Guai didn't bite it. The kind little girl was still worried that her Xiao Guai would be upset. She reached out to hold the kitten, scratched the fur behind its ears, and comforted it. "Okay, Xiao Guai, it's okay." However, Lil Guai did not appreciate it. It struggled in Cici's arms and called out softly, "Mimi, do you want to try again? Then you have to do your best." She took the cat stick back from Xiao Hui and Dodo's mouths with great difficulty. The process was no different from a tug of war. Although the kittens looked soft and weak, they still had a lot of bite power. "Let's have another competition," she said as if she was playing house. She reached out and tapped each kitten's head, as if they could understand her. She is about to start." The little girl waved the cat stick gently and kindly reminded the kittens. The kittens looked at the cat stick eagerly. Even Xiao Guai was restlessly stepping on its paws, ready to go. If they could speak, they would definitely tell Shi, "Don't waste time, let's start." Shi threw the cat stick again, but this time, the position she threw was obviously biased. Xiao Guai didn't even need to waste any effort. It turned around and pounced on the small bag, but it was more interested in the feathers. It held the small bag with its 2 front paws and nibbled on the feathers. "Yeah, Xiao Guai won." She clapped her hands happily. She happily hugged Xiao Guai again and rubbed her face against the kitten's forehead affectionately. "My Xiao Guai is the best. Xiao Hui and Dodo are also very good." She was still worried that the other 2 kittens would be unhappy, so she gave them a thumbs up. However, Xiao Hui and Dodo didn't care about Shi at this time. They found that the treasure that Xiao Guai had snatched was now free, so they couldn't wait to pounce on it. The 2 kittens even fought over it. Xiao Guai was the most miserable. It took a lot of effort to snatch the toys from the two kittens that were bigger than it, but before it could enjoy it, it was picked up by its little owner. The kitten could only meow pitifully. However, at this time, she suddenly heard her mother crying, "Yang Yi, you bastard." The little girl blinked her big eyes in confusion. Just as she turned her head, she saw her mother wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes and running past her. Murphy ran into the master bedroom and slammed the door with a bang. Yang Yi, who was originally enthusiastically discussing kindergarten issues with Murphy on the sofa, stood up, but in the end, he still frowned and sat back down. Although she was still young, she still noticed that there was something wrong between her parents. She quickly carried Xiao Guai and walked to her father's side. Xiao Guai's helpless and conflicted cry brought Yang Yi back to reality. He looked at his daughter, who was looking at him timidly, and his eyes gradually became gentle. "Don't worry, you can play with Xiao Guai and the others." Yang Yi reached out and rubbed his daughter's head, and said gently, "Papa, why is Mom crying?" She felt that her father's aura had calmed down, so she was not so nervous. She leaned on her father and asked. Yang Yi was silent for a while, and said vaguely, Because there are some issues that I need to talk to your mother about. Maybe there's a misunderstanding?" Xiao Guai struggled impatiently, so she could only put it on the ground and let it play with its brothers and sisters. She didn't have time to play with Xiao Guai. She's little head was working hard. She used her own way to understand this sudden competition for points. The little girl always felt that Papa's temper was the best, and he had never been fierce to she, but Mom would. It must be that Mom was not obedient and made Papa angry. However, she really did not want her parents to quarrel, because her parents had quarreled before, and it was very scary. After that, her mother was not willing to talk to her father anymore. She was very scared. She did not want to go back to how it was before. She did not want her parents to live separately, and she could only see one of them forever. That would not be happy at all. The little girl pulled her father's hand and said in a pleading tone, "Papa, don't be angry with Mom, okay? Mom is as obedient as she, and will be obedient in the future." Chapter 143. Yang Yi, you bastard. Murphy's scolding wasn't wrong at all. What he said was really too much. About 10 minutes ago, Murphy was discussing the conditions of the kindergarten with Yang Yi. She was very satisfied with the teaching conditions of one of the kindergartens because the teachers were all university students. Murphy felt that they could let she learn more. Is education really that important? Yang Yi suddenly asked. He had been holding this question in his heart for a long time, or it could be said that his predecessor had always been very concerned about it. Although these days of peaceful but happy days had almost made him forget this contradiction, Murphy's words now made the covered crack resurface again. Murphy still didn't understand what Yang Yi was asking. She thought they were still talking about the kindergarten. She smiled and said, "Of course, don't tell me you want a teacher who hasn't studied to teach your daughter? I don't have a university degree. I didn't even finish high school." Yang Yi raised his head, and his eyes were a little indifferent. "Is it that I'm not qualified to be she's father?" Murphy was choked by Yang Yi's words. She was stunned for a while before she said, "Why do you say that? Why do you say you're not qualified? What does this have to do with education? You're she's father, her biological father." Murphy still didn't understand why Yang Yi's tone suddenly became cold, but she felt like her most precious thing was being questioned, and the grievance in her heart spontaneously arose. Biological father? Yang Yi furrowed his brows. "Because I'm her biological father, so you want to be with me?" Yang Yi felt that since they were talking about this issue, he might as well lay it out and say all the doubts in his heart. Murphy looked at Yang Yi in shock. Yang Yi, a guy who had never been in a relationship before, honestly continued, "I've read an article saying that a father's love is very important when a girl is growing up." To be precise, this was an article that combined gossip and child growth studies. Using a female singer's tragic relationships where she met scumbags and had her privacy exposed after breaking up as an example, It talked about how a girl who lacked fatherly love had a high chance of meeting scumbags. A father was the first man a daughter came into contact with. If a girl could receive her father's care and love from a young age, then when she grew up, she would be able to handle relationships with ease. She might even use her outstanding father as a template to find a boyfriend. However, if they lacked this important emotion from a young age and had never received fatherly love, then they would have an excessive desire and dependence for love. As long as someone treated them a little better, they would be obedient to him. Obviously, this was very dangerous. The above content was what Yang Yi had read from the article. Naturally, he didn't want Shi to have the same tragedy as that female singer, so Yang Yi used everything he had to pamper his daughter and give her the best fatherly love in the world. However, the problem now wasn't Shi, but his relationship with Murphy. This question had troubled Yang Yi's predecessor for a long time, and now Yang Yi also wanted to know the answer. Where did the relationship between him and Murphy come from? Was it true love? Or was it a sacrifice made by Murphy simply because she wanted her daughter to have a father? Therefore, Yang Yi asked straightforwardly, "You want to create a good environment for Shi and give Shi a complete family, so you're willing to put down your prejudice against my lack of education, put away your contempt for my lack of money, and be with me hypocritically?" These words were too much. Yang Yi was completely standing in his own point of view, showing off his inner pride and questioning Murphy. Murphy couldn't imagine that Yang Yi would say this. It was almost an insult to her character, and the grievances in her heart burst out. She couldn't speak at all. She just wanted to scold Yang Yi as a bastard, so she turned around and ran back to the bedroom. However, the moment she turned around, Murphy couldn't hold back her tears of grievance, and they burst out from the corners of her eyes. "Bastard, big bastard. I don't want to talk to him anymore." The atmosphere in the house suddenly became strange. Murphy locked herself in the room, and she sat timidly on the side, hugging her REM pillow. She wasn't in the mood to play with the kittens, nor was she in the mood to watch cartoons. The little girl turned her head to look at her father from time to time. The word worry hung on her little face, and her beautiful brows were slightly furrowed. She was just like Sister Lin, and people couldn't help but feel pity for her. However, she didn't dare to disturb her father. This kind of feeling wasn't happy at all. This time, it was Yang Yi's own thoughts that floated in his heart. He felt inexplicably flustered, as if he was going to lose Murphy. Although the knot hadn't been untied yet, Yang Yi himself regretted it. Why did he bring it up? Wasn't it good to be muddle-headed? The memories of the past few days kept coming back to him. "Hey, you're back? What flowers did you buy?" Murphy's bright smile was like ripples of water. She rolled up her trousers, and her white and smooth calves, and her exquisite and cute feet, seemed to set off the brilliance. "Let's walk in front, ignore him." It was a walk on the dam after dinner in the evening. Murphy's back was slender and graceful, and her hair that fluttered in the wind was dyed a beautiful red in the afterglow of the setting sun. If you want to practice your voice, first feel how my vocal cords vibrate when I speak. In the morning, Murphy took Yang Yi's hand, raised his index finger, and pressed it on her throat. Yang Yi forgot what he was doing, and just stared at Murphy. Her neck was very thin, and her skin was as white as snow. When his finger touched it, it felt as smooth as jade. However, Murphy's serious look was as if she was bathing in holy light. Although Yang Yi could see the faint scenery under her exquisite collarbone, he still didn't dare to profane the sincerity. "Did I say something that hurt you?" Yang Yi thought silently. "Really?" Now that he had calmed down, Yang Yi realized that he didn't think through what he said at that time. "Fake affection. Because I'm your biological father, so you want to be with me?" Regardless of whether what he said was right or not, these words shouldn't have come out of his mouth. It hurt her self-esteem too much. "What exactly do you want?" Yang Yi asked himself a question that he hadn't thought about carefully. Could it be that he wanted Murphy to admit that he was as despicable as Yang Yi thought, and then force Murphy to leave? Of course not. Yang Yi liked the feeling of being with Murphy, especially after these days of contact. They had more and more in common, and more happiness. How could he bear to let Murphy leave? But why did he say such things? Could Murphy still have a way out? Perhaps he wanted Murphy to admit that she wasn't, and then the two of them could be together without any grudges. But after saying these words, how could Murphy not care? How could she not be sad? Even if the grudges between them were resolved, wouldn't there be a crack in her heart? Yang Yi really regretted it. In his mind, the image of Murphy crying but determined to leave appeared. Yang Yi's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. You have to do something, Yang Yi said to himself in his heart. Chapter 144. Murphy ran back and cried on the bed, feeling wronged. There was only one thought left in her mind. Really, don't bother with him anymore. This guy is still so infuriating. He hasn't changed at all. In fact, Yang Yi wasn't any better in the past. In fact, he was even worse than today. But in the past, Murphy wasn't so wronged that she cried. She was just angry and annoyed. Today's grievance was mainly because she had already accepted Yang Yi in her heart. She also liked his usual meticulous doting. So now that Yang Yi suddenly threw a tantrum, it was hard for her to accept. After some time, Murphy stopped crying. She was still in her original position, lying on the bed in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a light knock on the door. Murphy came back to her senses. She turned over absent-mindedly and stared at the bedroom door. Murphy, it's me. Yang Yi's deep voice sounded from outside. It was my fault just now. I went a little overboard with my words. Murphy pursed her lips, feeling wronged. She couldn't help but cry. It was indeed my fault, but I didn't mean it that way. Maybe there was a problem with the way I expressed it, causing you to misunderstand. So now, let's not get agitated. Let's calm down and talk openly, okay? Yang Yi said softly. It seemed that it was the wish of many people that they could have an open and honest discussion and resolve the misunderstanding. Murphy actually wanted to have a good talk with Yang Yi. But when she thought about how this guy was so fierce to her, she pouted and thought, don't talk to this guy. Don't bother with him. Yes, she had to leave him hanging. She couldn't indulge his reckless character. The bedroom door was locked. Yang Yi twisted the doorknob but couldn't get in. After a while, there was no movement at the door. Murphy couldn't take it anymore. She turned her head and felt wronged again. He only said a few words to apologize, and then he didn't say anything? You're so patient with Shi, but don't you care about me at all? Although there was no need to be jealous of Shi, and Murphy knew that Yang Yi was not mature enough in terms of relationships, she still felt stifled in her heart. Hold on a little longer, and I'll open the door for you. Murphy had a thought in her mind. Of course, there was another thought that was competing with her. No, I don't want to. Didn't we agree to ignore this bastard? Plop. A strange noise came from the small balcony of the master bedroom. It was very loud, as if something had fallen, which gave Murphy a fright. She turned her head and looked over, only to see Yang Yi appear on the small balcony like a divine soldier descending from the heavens. He then clapped his hands and walked in. I didn't hear any movement in the room. I thought something had happened to you. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief when he saw her looking at his slightly swollen but still spirited eyes. How did you get here? Murphy was stunned. Not to mention that he could jump from the balcony to the balcony. The large balcony in the living room and the small balcony in the bedroom were 6 to 7 meters apart. A normal person wouldn't even be able to jump 4 to 5 meters with a run-up. Yang Yi explained, I came from the large balcony, grabbed the eaves, and jumped a few times like this. It wasn't too difficult. Fearing that Mo Fei didn't understand what he meant, he even made some gestures like a monkey flying around the tree. In fact, when Murphy saw that he was worried about her, the anger in her heart had disappeared without a trace. However, she still felt wronged, so she didn't want to pretend to be nice to Yang Yi. Therefore, when Yang Yi saw her sit up on the bed with a cold face and turn her head away, she didn't want to look at him. This feeling was just like when they first met. Murphy came to pick up her daughter, and the two of them didn't see eye to eye, so they simply ignored each other. However, Yang Yi didn't want to go back to the past. He liked to see Murphy smile. "I went overboard with what I said just now. I'm sorry." Yang Yi stood there and said in a low voice, "Just saying sorry is enough?" Murphy turned her head away, pursed her lips, and said coldly, "You can do whatever you want, or I can beat you up. I won't resist." Yang Yi said. Murphy snorted and didn't say anything. Yang Yi really didn't know how to deal with this kind of situation. He didn't know how to coax a woman, so the two of them were in a deadlock. Forget it. After a while, Murphy sighed secretly. She knew that Yang Yi wasn't the kind of guy who was glib, so she didn't wait for him to coax her. She turned her head, looked coldly at Yang Yi, and asked, "You said that I looked down on you because of your low education, and that you're not qualified to be Shishi's papa. Why do you think so?" "Because you care about education." Seeing that Mo Fei finally spoke, Yang Yi could finally let go of the nervousness and hesitation in his heart. He quickly said, "You have talked to me about academic qualifications more than once, but why is academic qualifications so important? Is education the standard to measure a person's talent?" Murphy understood. She glared at Yang Yi and then said, "I care about education, but I don't care about your education. I hope my daughter can get into a good university and get a higher education." "Is that wrong?" "Huh?" Yang Yi was a little confused. "The reason why I care so much about education is that I've seen it. There used to be a senior who sang very well in the entertainment circle. Because he only had a primary school education, he was humiliated by the people of the Literature Association in a cross-industry event." Murphy clearly remembered the senior's helpless smile in a variety show, although he only said it as a joke. "I don't look down on you, and I won't look down on people with low education, but I hope my daughter won't be looked down upon." Murphy said, "Can you understand my difficulties?" So that was the case. The knot in Yang Yi's heart suddenly dissolved. He couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. He felt that he had misunderstood Murphy for so long. Even if his predecessor should take most of the blame, Yang Yi put the blame on himself. "I'm sorry, I misunderstood you." Yang Yi sighed softly. "If there's anything I can do to make up for the harm I've done to you, please tell me." He's still as honest as before. Who would admit their mistakes like this? Murphy didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Yang Yi's words, but she didn't want to laugh. She coldly asked the thing she had been thinking about for a long time, which was the reason why she called Yang Yi a bastard before. "I have another question. Why do you think I'm pretending to get along with you?" The author's words can't be put down. P.S. To answer some of your questions. 1. The protagonist has a high IQ and low EQ, but his low EQ doesn't lie in his usual behavior. Xiaohan remembered that there was a saying on the internet that people with high EQ are able to hold back the most hurtful words. Yang Yi is probably lacking in this. Put yourself in his shoes. Haven't you made the same mistake when you were in love? Of course, Xiaohan didn't mean that what Yang Yi did was right. It was best not to say hurtful words. 2. The discussion about education was just a consideration made by the characters from their point of view. It was just like each of them had their own opinions. It couldn't be said who was right and who was wrong. It just depended on the situation. As for Xiaohan herself, Xiaohan would tell others that education was very important and that they must get into a good university, but Xiaohan herself was very annoyed by others saying that she went to some university and came back to play computer games every day. It's better not to mention it. Chapter 145. Yang Yi was stunned by Murphy's question and didn't quite know how to answer. Later on, even he himself felt that the word hypocritical was too much. He had blurted it out at that time, so what reason could there be? Yang Yi was speechless and could only tell her the story of that female celebrity. He then said honestly, "Our relationship was actually an accident and a mistake. Of course, I would not take care of she because she's my daughter. It's just that. I don't want our previous relationship to be based on she and I don't want you to be with me because you want to give she a home." Murphy felt even more wronged after hearing what he said. She bit her lower lip and asked angrily, "Are we together? When did we get together?" Yang Yi didn't know how to answer her again. Murphy didn't intend to wait for Yang Yi's answer. She raised her head and looked at Yang Yi proudly and said, "Humph, Yang Yi, I admit that I've had some feelings for you recently, but please don't think too highly of yourself, okay? I'm not so petty as to sacrifice my feelings for you just for Cece." In any case, his sister was once a big star who was famous all over the country. In terms of status, the difference between Murphy and Yang Yi was too big. Only Yang Yi, who still had the memories of his previous life, was so narcissistic that he thought that a famous celebrity would throw herself at him. Just now, your analysis of Ah Ling's story was right. Girls do need their father's love. So after I met you, I still hoped that you could spend time with Shishi, so I tried my best to send Shishi over for 2 days every week. Yang Yi nodded. Murphy was right. That was the arrangement at that time. And when Murphy wasn't busy, she couldn't bear to let Shishi stay at her father's house for a moment longer. Murphy raised her chin and said stubbornly, "But that doesn't mean that I have any feelings for you. I can live well on my own and raise Shishi. I can even find another man who will be good to me and Shishi in the future. I don't need to be angry at you." "How can that be?" Yang Yi was anxious. He paused and said, "I mean, how can that be? He's not Shishi's father. How can he be good to Shishi? Can he be as good as me? You are the one who is not good. You are an asshole who annoys people all day long." Mo Fei turned her head away angrily. How could Yang Yi tell if Murphy was deliberately trying to anger him? Now when he thought of Mo Fei saying that she wanted to find another man, he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. When he thought that Cece was going to call someone else daddy, he panicked. "No, didn't you just say that you have a good impression of me?" Murphy bit her lower lip and refused to admit it. Did I say that?" "You did." Yang Yi thought that she had forgotten. He nodded and said, "You just said that you admit that you have feelings for me recently." I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it." Murphy covered her ears and shook her head. Yang Yi was speechless. After a while, Murphy turned her head and didn't want to look at Yang Yi. Then, she said in a very low voice, almost inaudible, "It's just that I have feelings for you recently. Who asked you to be so good to me? But now..." Murphy didn't know what was going on now. She felt that Yang Yi was so bad and as fierce as before. It was best that she didn't have any feelings for him. Yang Yi stood there stupidly and didn't say anything. He actually heard what Murphy said. His ears were too sensitive, so he heard it clearly. But after listening to it, he suddenly came to an unexpected conclusion from the information in the middle. Murphy really didn't have feelings for him in the past. Maybe she was only willing to interact with Yang Yi because she wanted Shishi to be cared for by her father. She wouldn't have stopped interacting with him after being angered by Yang Yi so many times. But Murphy had feelings for him now because Yang Yi had changed and was good to her. So, the person that Murphy likes is me? And not the other me? After coming to this conclusion, Yang Yi didn't know whether he should be happy or not. Or should he be happy? Or should he be complacent and get carried away? He was Yang Yi, but it could also be said that he wasn't Yang Yi. The original Yang Yi could be said to be him, but it could also be said that he wasn't him. He was the current Yang Yi. Murphy liked the current him, so he was better than the original him? After a series of logic, Yang Yi was a little confused by himself. Anyway, the most important thing was that Mo Fei had a good impression of him. Yang Yi didn't say anything. Murphy finally couldn't help but turn her head. Her gaze fell on Yang Yi, who couldn't help but let out a silly smile. Murphy suddenly pursed her lips. She was angry and amused at the same time. "You're so stupid. What are you talking about? Look at how proud he is. I don't want you to be with other people." In front of Murphy, Yang Yi forgot his original free and easy manner. He actually stuttered and said, Because I care." "Why?" Murphy retorted. Because you're Shi's mother." Yang Yi said. "Humph. Wrong answer." Murphy turned her head and didn't want to talk to him. But at this time, Yang Yi didn't know why, but he suddenly seemed to be enlightened. After stuttering for a while, he blurted out, "And because I like you." As soon as he said this, Yang Yi felt as if a string had been pulled in his heart. He suddenly understood how he felt about Mo Fei. Mo Fei was dumbfounded this time. She turned her head and stared at Yang Yi blankly. Although she looked forward to it, she never thought that Yang Yi would reveal his feelings at this time. "I like you, I like your songs, I like your flower arrangement, I like your smile, and I like to sing with you." Since Yang Yi started, he couldn't stop. In this life, he was already an ordinary person, living an ordinary life. Why should he be afraid of commitment and feelings? Why not be brave enough to pursue what he loved? Yang Yi figured it out. Murphy pursed her lips. Her eyes were a little red, but she didn't know what to do. This bastard. How could she be moved by him? She clearly said that she would ignore him. "Mom. Papa is missing. She is so scared." Shi's voice suddenly sounded at the door. The little girl's timid voice immediately interrupted the ambiguous and awkward atmosphere between Yang Yi and Murphy. In the end, his daughter was more important. Murphy hurriedly got out of bed, and Yang Yi almost walked to the door at the same time. Murphy opened the door and picked up the restless Shi. "Hey, why is Papa here?" When she saw her father, she was surprised at first, but then she immediately opened her eyes wide in confusion. Just now, her father went to the balcony and disappeared. She was so scared. But why would Papa appear in Mom's room? She couldn't understand. Murphy glared at Yang Yi and said to her daughter, "Your Papa is very bad. He left she outside. Let's not talk to her, okay?" "Yes, Papa is very bad." She thought about her worries just now, pouted her small mouth, and shared her mother's hatred of the enemy. Yang Yi smiled helplessly and brought Shi out with Murphy. No matter what, with their daughter here, no matter how big the conflict between the two of them was, they couldn't make a scene. However, Murphy saw that he was still laughing, and felt unhappy. She secretly stretched out her leg to kick him. "What are you laughing at? Don't laugh." "Then you're not allowed to do that." Yang Yi couldn't say it too clearly in front of his daughter. "Humph, why should I?" Murphy raised her chin and said a little proudly, "You haven't pursued me. Do you think that if you say you like me, I can't be with anyone else and have to be with you obediently? Then I want to pursue you." "What?" "Murphy." Yang Yi was very serious, as if he was taking an oath to join the party. He almost raised his fist. "I said I want to pursue you, so that you can be with me in the future." Okay. She said happily, trying to destroy the atmosphere. She also wants to pursue Mom, so that Mom, Papa, and she can be together forever. Chapter 146. Changzi was a little worried recently, not because of the lack of money, but because the authors under his management, especially Yang Yi, had achieved excellent results in the past few months, which also made his performance soar. Because of this, the leader also increased his salary and bonus. His worry was not because he was urged to get married. Changzi was used to being urged by his family to go on blind dates and get married. However, during this time, his family did not care about him, so Changzi was free. He was worried because of Yang Yi. This restless author usually could not find him, and he did not take care of his own book review section. However, every time he was found, nothing good would happen. For example, this time, Yang Yi actually planned to open 2 books. "You want to publish a new book?" Changzi was stunned and asked, "Why?" Changzi still remembered Yang Yi's answer very clearly, "Because I have no money." At that time, Changzi was in a bad mood. How could he say that he had no money in front of a poor person? Changzi clearly remembered Yang Yi's payment list last month, and the number on it was 7 digits. Of course, Changzi could not mock his own author. He could only persuade Yang Yi with a bitter smile, telling him that opening 2 books would affect the quality of the book, and earnestly persuade Yang Yi to give up the idea. However, when he said these words, Changzi knew that it was useless. Sure enough, how could he persuade Yang Yi when he decided on something? Moreover, Changzi was persuaded by Yang Yi. Yang Yi did not talk much with Changzi on SNS at all. He directly sent a few drafts. After Changzi read them, he could not help but be addicted to the criminal world that Yang Yi had created. Is it good? Wu Yubin from the technical department asked Changzi. Good. Changzi added, it's better than remaining sin. Is it that bad? Wu Yubin asked in surprise. It's true. I feel that if I don't let Yang Yi write this novel, I'll be committing a crime. When Changzi thought of the plot, he felt itchy in his heart. So let him upload it quickly. I also want to catch up. No, I have to ask him to send me the rest of the plot first. I have to help him correct the mistakes, if there are any. Wu Yubin smiled and said, all right, then why are you looking for me? Don't tell me you want me to suffer as much as you do? How could that be? Although I do want you to fall into my trap, haha. Changzi explained, it's like this. Yang Yi said that his book needs to be accompanied by illustrations, and he will draw the pictures. But now, we can't mix pictures in the published chapters on the website. See if there's anything you can do to help. There's even an illustration? Wu Yubin was surprised. Could he be writing a light novel? No, it's a crime novel. It's very serious. But there are some places that can't be described with words alone. Illustrations are needed to help convey some information. Changzi said. So that's how it is. Did the managing editor and the others agree? Wu Yubin asked. It's not a big technical problem. Originally, there were some other examples on the forum that could give us some code that we can copy. It just needs some time to perfect and test it. Huda has already approved it. Changzi said. Is 7 days enough? We're going to put it on the shelves on September 1st. It just so happens that we have more than a week to arrange for publicity. No problem. Wu Yubin nodded. Fatty, come here quickly. Guazi, who was drinking water under the shade of a tree, heard the call. He quivered and quickly jumped up. His footsteps were hurried, and he trotted to the side of the young man who liked to have a pen in his ear. Brother Bin, hello. Director Wan, hello. Guazi said with a smile. His hands were not idle as he deftly took out a pack of good cigarettes and handed it to them. Guazi did not smoke, but after mingling for a while, he still knew a lot of routines. For example, he would buy 2 packs of cigarettes, one expensive and one cheap, and put them in his 2 pockets. The middle-aged man in the straw hat that Guazi called Director Wan was actually not on the list of directors. At most, he was an assistant director who only helped with some unimportant scenes. He was considered a disciple that Chan Fengchen had nurtured, but his ability was still lacking. Chan Fengchen still gave most of the supporting work to his assistant director. But for the extras who had no contact with big directors, Director Wan was the real big boss. Director Wan looked up at Guazi. He was quite satisfied with Guazi's comically fat appearance and said, Big Bin just recommended you to me. Try this role. You have these 2 lines. General, the enemy is here, and I've lost my knife. Take this script and read it. Remember the lines. There were lines. This was the treatment of a special actor. Guazi was delighted as he hurriedly thanked Director Wan and Brother Dabin. Director Wan was busy. He waved his hand and asked Guazi and Big Bin to leave. He needed to clear the set for filming. Big Bin walked a few steps and said to Guazi with deep meaning, Fatty, when you become famous in the future, don't forget my help. How can I forget? Guazi smiled. Big Bin, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Tonight, I'll treat you and Director Wan to Ran Village. Ran Village was actually a barbecue stall. It wasn't considered high class, but it suited Guazi's background. Big Bin often went there, but it was always treated by extras. Big Bin was very satisfied with Guazi's tactfulness. He nodded and said, Just treat me. Director Wan doesn't care about this. Also, if you invite him to Ran village, he won't be interested. After getting rid of Big Bin, Guazi couldn't wait to sit under the shade of the tree and carefully read the script. Although he had mixed around with these extras for a few days and learned a lot of fake tricks, Guazi didn't forget his original intention. He wanted to be a big actor, a big star. He had to seize the opportunity and work hard to hone his acting skills. Xiao Guo seems to be rich. A few of the village brothers who were close to him didn't dare to disturb Guazi and started to whisper. Should be. He even got the script. It should be a big role. What big role? It's just a small extra with 2 lines. Guazi heard this and didn't pretend to be cold. Instead, he raised his head and smiled at his brothers as usual. If it has lines, it's not a small extra. It's a special actor. That's right. It can earn us a few days' worth of money in a day. But special actors don't get special actors every day. It's still more stable for us extras. Look at how useless you are. The village brothers didn't disturb Guazi anymore. They lowered their voices and continued to talk. Oh right. Have you heard? It seems that the big director isn't around these few days. He handed everything over to the assistant director. That's why there are so many things with the surname Wan. Where did he go? Could it be that he was sick? Old people get sick easily. My dad. Who said he's sick? Don't spread rumors. I heard that he's on a business trip and isn't filming. How did you get the news so fast? You even know about the big director? That's because I learned it from Xiao Guo. I have to learn how to eavesdrop. Those actors are always gossiping. A short village brother with a thick accent mumbled, You guys follow Xiao Guo all day. Why haven't you guys improved at all? Yo, Gung Sha is so hardworking. I'm afraid you're going to be a special actor too. There were always people who didn't work hard and were always jealous of others. Chapter 147. Yang Yi's decision to pursue Murphy wasn't just for show. He wasn't usually cold, but he was also like a blockhead who wouldn't take the initiative. However, when he tried hard to do something, his tricks were endless. Murphy woke up in the morning to practice her voice with Yang Yi as promised. However, when she finished washing up and was about to pour herself a glass of water, she suddenly realized that on the coffee table in the living room, there were 2 beautiful flowers next to her cup. If they were real flowers, Murphy wouldn't be so surprised. However, they weren't real flowers. Murphy looked at them carefully and realized that they were carved from fresh carrots. The flower buds had not fully bloomed yet, but they were delicate and beautiful. Of course, after being surprised and slightly touched, Murphy couldn't help but laugh. This guy even had obsessive-compulsive disorder when it came to carving flowers. 1 flower wasn't enough. There had to be 2 symmetrical flowers, and the 2 flowers had to be carved exactly the same. She was surprised from time to time. During lunch, Yang Yi fried a heart-shaped egg, which was considered a small scene. However, when Yang Yi brought out a dish with only 2 symmetrical chicken wings and lettuce, Murphy was really surprised. Yang Yi's culinary skills were unquestionable. The chicken wings were crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. The skin was also drizzled with thick tomato soup. The soup was sparkling like amber, making it very appetizing. This dish is called flying wing to wing. Yang Yi explained seriously, wing is Yang Yi's E, and flying is Murphy's Fei. The chicken wings are marinated with honey and other seasonings to ensure that the sweetness seeps into the bones. After they are fried, they are drizzled with sour tomato juice. It's sweet and sour, and it symbolizes the beautiful taste of love. He really revealed his feelings to Murphy in front of Shi. Of course, she couldn't understand the first part of the sentence. She only heard that the chicken wings were sweet and sour. She started drooling. Murphy, on the other hand, listened to the front and back of the story. At first, she felt touched and sweet in her heart, but when she heard Yang Yi's explanation of wing is Yang Yi's E, and Fei is Murphy's Fei, she couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. She had made up her mind to treat Yang Yi harshly for the past few days, but when she was with him, she couldn't help but laugh. Her previous indifference was gone. This guy was really... If he wasn't as dumb as a wooden man, he would be so corny. I want chicken wings. She stared eagerly at her favorite chicken wings. After her father finished his introduction, she couldn't wait to start yelling. She didn't care about love at all, just thinking about the sweet and sour taste. Only what was in the mouth and stomach was true love. However, there were only 2 chicken wings. How were they going to split them? As the saying goes, flying wing to wing, Yang-yi and Murphy should each have one. But there was no other way. She, the third wheel, was here, so the romance had to be discounted. Yang-yi didn't care. He picked up a chicken wing for his daughter. This chicken wing wasn't just a chicken wing, but also included the wing tip and the chicken shoulder. The little girl got what she wanted, so she happily held it in her hands and gnawed on it. As for the remaining chicken wing, Yang-yi naturally gave it to Murphy. He didn't care if he ate it or not. In any case, he had already conveyed his intention to Murphy. Are you stupid? Murphy said to Yang-yi angrily, why didn't you make an extra chicken wing? You clearly know that there are 3 people in the house. 3 meanings are wrong, Yang-yi explained. Then why didn't you take a plate and put the remaining one aside first, and bring it up when it's time to eat? Murphy was really speechless at this late-stage OCD patient. 3 is not enough. She can eat 2. She ate at the side until her face was stained with red tomato juice, probably from the chicken wing tip. When she heard the conversation between her parents, she couldn't help but stop and say with her mouth full. Yang-yi just chuckled and didn't talk back. Murphy wasn't in a hurry to eat like she. She hesitated for a moment, but still broke the chicken wing and put the chicken shoulder into Yang-yi's bowl. Then, her face was a little red, but she pretended not to care and said, look at you, you worked hard. I'll share some with you, humph. In the afternoon, Murphy wanted to play the piano, so the family went downstairs to the coffee shop. Yang-yi wiped the bar counter, washed all the utensils, made milk for she, and made coffee for Murphy. Murphy played a song, and under she's yelling, she held the little girl in her arms and taught her how to play the piano. Of course, she's small arms and hands were definitely not able to play the piano. She was still stuck between 1 finger and 2 finger zen. 2 finger zen referred to the use of the left index finger. So Murphy played the song slowly, and from time to time, she would let she press a few notes. It was almost like a child playing, but she wanted to improve she's interest in playing the piano. Yang-yi originally only drank plain coffee without sugar or milk, but this didn't mean that he didn't know how to make other kinds of coffee. Today, when he saw the milk for she, he suddenly had an idea. He wanted to show Murphy a cappuccino. Of course, this process was a bit complicated. After all, he had to prepare milk bubbles. These milk bubbles needed to be made with fresh milk that had been refrigerated as the raw material. After beating, heating, and other processes, they had to be made. Fortunately, Murphy and she had a lot of fun. Although the little girl was only responsible for pressing 2 keys according to her mother's instructions, she felt that she had contributed to the beautiful melody played. She couldn't stop giggling. Her bell-like laughter seemed to add a chord to the music. After the milk bubbles and milk were ready, Yang-yi began to draw the flowers. He hadn't done it for a long time, and Yang-yi was worried that he was a bit rusty. However, in this life, his control of his body seemed to have improved, so this rusty seemed to have been made up. Yang-yi tilted the coffee cup 30 degrees, and then gently tilted the cup of the flower pot, and pulled it up and down. This process required meticulous control of the tilting and shaking of the flower pot. Otherwise, the drawn pattern would be distorted. Gradually, the coffee cup became more and more full. Yang-yi began to pull the string. He lifted the cup of the flower pot to make the amount of milk bubbles that flowed out thinner, and slowly pulled it to the front. When the string was almost completely pulled, the whole cup of coffee happened to be full and not overflowing. It was perfect. During this process, Yang-yi seemed to be doing it steadily. However, when he put down the coffee cup, he still let out a long sigh of relief. In the process, he used a lot of energy. After all, He hadn't made cappuccino for several years. Murphy's coffee and She's milk were brought over by Yang-e on a plate. He was like an experienced waiter. He held the plate firmly with his left hand, and not a single drop of milk spilled. There was a small table next to the piano. Yang-e placed the cup on it and passed the milk to Shi first. After all, Shi was still a child. After playing the piano for a while, she had enough and couldn't sit still. "Let me see what Mom wants to drink." The little girl held the milk bottle and drank it while curiously coming over to take a look. When she saw it, She exclaimed in surprise, "Wow, it's so beautiful." She's exclamation made Murphy, who was still playing the piano, curious. What kind of coffee was it that her daughter said it was beautiful? Chapter 148. Coffee Can Be Beautiful? Murphy didn't hear about it. After she finished, she stood up from the stool. "This cup of coffee is specially made for you." Yang-e held the tray in his hand, pointed to the coffee that was already placed on the small table, and said with a smile. Mo Fei took a look. In the white and smooth coffee cup, the light brown coffee was about to overflow, and what was even more eye-catching was that there were layers of milk bubbles floating on top of each other, like ripples on the surface of a lake, but they actually condensed into a beautiful heart shape. His heart was so big that it almost filled the coffee cup to the brim. "How did you make it?" It was the first time Murphy saw that coffee could be played with like this. It seemed that no one in the world had ever thought of using milk bubbles to play with coffee. "It's milk bubbles, and then..." Yang-e explained, and even gestured with his hands. He didn't know that Murphy actually didn't care about the process of making coffee, she just asked in surprise. However, she was very supportive. The little girl held the milk bottle in front of her chest with both hands and forgot to drink it. She looked at her father with two big eyes and couldn't help but exclaim, "So amazing." Murphy pursed her lips and looked at Yang-ye's serious look. She was happy in her heart, but she didn't want to admit it. She secretly muttered, "So many tricks, don't you think it's mushy? Hey, if you don't restrain yourself in front of she, I'll feel embarrassed. I want to drink it too. Papa, can you give she some too? Just a little." She looked at such a beautiful coffee, and her mind moved again. Because it was beautiful, she forgot the bitterness of drinking coffee in the past. "Ask your mother. This cup of coffee belongs to your mother." Yang-e smiled and raised his eyebrows at his daughter. Murphy was actually quite reluctant. That heart was like a work of art. How could she be willing to destroy it? "I haven't even had a sip yet," Murphy whispered, and only Yang-e could hear it. But how could Murphy be a selfish mother? She hesitated for a moment, but she still couldn't stand her daughter's pitiful little eyes and the way she was begging on the small table. She reached out and moved the coffee cup towards her daughter. "All right, you can only taste it once. Children can't drink coffee," Murphy said. He, then let's have a taste." She's face lit up as she stretched out her slender index finger and playfully gestured. However, Cece moved her small mouth closer and took a sip from the edge of the cup. Immediately, the little girl's brows furrowed again. It doesn't taste good. It's so bitter." She's mouth was still covered with milk bubbles, as if she had grown a white beard. It was very funny, especially with her bitter little face. The little girl's pitiful and funny appearance almost made Yang-e and Murphy laugh. This cup of cappuccino was actually not particularly bitter. After all, Yang-e added milk and sugar, and mixed it according to Murphy's taste. But who asked she to have a painful experience of drinking original flavor coffee before? The bitter taste on the tongue awakened the memory of that time. She distanced herself from the coffee in disgust. When her father wiped her mouth with a tissue, she said to him, "I won't drink coffee anymore. Papa is so bad," lying to she. You obviously wanted to drink it." Yang-e wanted to pinch the little girl's nose, who refused to pay her father, but she nimbly dodged, and then drank her sweet milk while giggling. She didn't drink coffee, but when she took a sip, it destroyed the original shape of the milk bubbles. The heart was crooked, and there was one place that became sharp. Murphy looked at it helplessly, but she couldn't complain about her daughter. However, the coffee was still very delicious. Murphy took a sip, and the strong taste of milk diluted the bitterness of the coffee, and there seemed to be some sweetness in the aftertaste that sank into the heart. She ran to play by herself. Yang-yi turned his head, looked at Murphy, and asked with a smile, "How is it? Is it delicious?" Murphy didn't deliberately belittle it. She nodded gently and said, "It's delicious. It's easier to drink after adding milk." "Then I'll add milk for you next time." Yang-yi made a small note in his heart. "Which one of the 12 songs do you like the most?" Between the two of them, it was still music that they could talk about. Yang-yi leaned against the shelf and stood on the side, listening to Mo Fei play the piano comfortably. The two of them were also chatting casually. "Which one do you like the most?" Murphy asked back. Yang-yi scratched his head, and pretended not to care, and said, "In my voice." Of course, he liked this song the most. It was too suitable for his experience with Murphy. "It's actually this song." "Then guess which one do I like the most?" Murphy continued to ask. "Oh, in my voice?" Yang-yi said with anticipation. "I already said it's actually the most. Do you still think I like this song the most?" Murphy said angrily. She turned her head to look at Yang-yi's eyes, as if to say, "Are you an idiot?" Because she knew that Mu Xiang wrote the song for the person he liked, Murphy didn't even think about her and Yang-yi's story. Yang-yi himself was a little disappointed. He really hoped that Murphy liked the song that he deliberately picked for her the most. "My favorite is Carefree Lament." Murphy gave an answer that Yang-yi didn't expect. Note 1. Carefree Lament? You actually like this song? This song to you, isn't it not challenging at all? Yang-yi asked in surprise. That's right. This song was basically like a poem. It had long lyrics, rhythmic sentences, and a simple and clear melody. Even those who didn't know how to sing would be able to sing this song well. Because the lyrics of this song are well written. Murphy said with emotion, "I have never seen such ancient lyrics." "Yeah, you told me before that it was China style. Look at this sentence, self-deprecating, the ink runs out of thousands of feelings, the hero is sad, the song ends, the hair is white, and the beauty dies. Isn't it beautifully written?" That kind of faint sadness is included in the Carefree Lament. Murphy said in a genteel manner. What she said made sense. The reason why Yang-yi liked this song was that he felt that the lyrics were well written. Listening to it, he seemed to be able to see the fluttering snow, playing out the love and hatred of the Zhonghu, but being drowned by time. Compared to those songs that use techniques to sing emotions, I still prefer this kind of song with a plain melody, but with profound meaning. Murphy said. She was also interested in playing a song to sing for Yang-yi. But at this time, she ran over and shouted, "Papa, Papa! There is a strange old man at the door." Note 1, Carefree Lament was originally sung by Hugu, but the female version is quite good. If you are interested, you can search for Su Wei's version on Cloud Music. Chapter 149. She said that there was a strange old man, and the word strange was not wrong. She was playing in the shop earlier, and through the floor-to-ceiling glass, she saw an old man loitering outside, looking around. Yang-yi heard his daughter's words and looked back, only to see an old man in a loose navy cotton linen tang suit and a light gray fisherman's hat standing at the door. Where did this old man come from? Could he be a customer of the coffee shop? Considering Murphy's special identity, Yang-yi stood up and went to the door, just in time to meet the old man's gaze. "I'm sorry, sir, our shop is not open today," Yang-yi said apologetically. In his heart, he was also secretly surprised. This old man was not an ordinary person. His eyes were slightly cloudy. After all, he was old, but he still had a majestic aura, as if he had been in a high position for a long time. "It's not open in broad daylight?" The old man frowned, carefully looking at Yang-yi's figure and physique, and asked, aren't you the owner of this shop? Yes, as you can see, the shop sign is not hung out. It's the school holidays now, and there aren't many customers, so I don't plan to open the shop, Yang-yi smiled and said in a respectful tone. If it were not for the fact that he was afraid of Murphy's identity being exposed, Yang-yi would have invited the old man in. However, Murphy walked over and looked at the old man's face closely. She only confirmed it when she got closer, and asked in surprise, "Director Chen? What are you doing here?" This, Director Chen, exposed Chen Fengchen's identity, and he was also a little surprised. He turned to look at Murphy. At first, he did not recognize Murphy, who did not wear any makeup and was still dressed at home, but after all, the two had worked together before. Murphy sang the theme song for Chen Fengchen's TV series, and a few years ago, Murphy was quite famous, so Chen Fengchen recognized her. Murphy. Murphy. Chen Fengchen's surprise was no less than Murphy's. It's me. Murphy smiled and said, "Last time when I was recording a program at the TV station, I even bumped into you and greeted you." So it was someone he knew. And from the way he addressed him, he should be someone he was familiar with in the entertainment industry. In that case, there shouldn't be a problem of his identity being exposed. Yang-yi heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly stepped aside. He couldn't let her continue to stand at the door. "Director Chen, please come in and take a seat." Murphy greeted him like a hostess. She even nudged Yang-yi and whispered, "Go and pour some tea for Director Chen. He's not used to coffee." There was still tea in the tea shop. Although Yang-yi did not plan to sell tea in the coffee shop, he often drank tea himself. Seeing Yang-yi turn around and go to the bar, Chen Fengchen looked strangely at Murphy and the little girl behind her who was grabbing her mother's clothes and peeking her head out. Chen Fengchen couldn't help but ask in a gossipy manner, "Little M.O., what are you doing here?" Murphy was a little embarrassed, but the person who asked her was Chen Fengchen. If she was a movie producer, it wouldn't be too much to call him teacher. Therefore, she admitted it openly, "Yes, this is my daughter, and he's also my husband." "Oh right, my husband is also your fan. He's been watching your TV series a few days ago, but our relationship hasn't been made public yet, so I'd like to ask Director Chen to keep it a secret." After saying that, Murphy glanced at Yang-yi at the bar and secretly gritted her teeth. This guy must be secretly happy. Humph, secretly happy? I won't let you off so easily. Chen Fengchen was a little shocked at first. After all, there was no news of Murphy getting married in the entertainment industry. How could her daughter be so old already? However, he wasn't too surprised. After all, hiding one's feelings and marriage wasn't uncommon in the entertainment industry. However, when he heard Murphy's last sentence and thought of his purpose for coming, Chen Fengchen looked strangely at Yang-yi, who was walking over with a cup of brewed tea. Murphy had a cold personality and wasn't good at socializing. Therefore, after she confessed, her conversation with Chen Fengchen fell into an awkward silence. Chen Fengchen was thinking about his own matters again and didn't care. However, Murphy herself was troubled and didn't know what to say. After Yang-yi brought the tea over and sat beside her, Murphy reluctantly thought of something to say. She asked, "Director Chen, are you here today to look for actors in Jiangchuan?" Apart from this possibility, Murphy couldn't think of any other reason why Chen Fengchen would leave Beijing and come to Jiang City Media University. Yang-yi wasn't interested in the entertainment industry. He brewed tea and brought it over to the old man. In fact, he wanted to pull his daughter away and not disturb Murphy and the other party's conversation. However, Chen Fengchen's expression was a little strange. He pointed at Yang-yi and said, "If I'm not wrong, your husband is Yang-yi, right?" Murphy was surprised. She didn't expect the old man to know Yang-yi's name. However, she wasn't so shrewd. She nodded and said, "Yes, how did you know?" However, Yang-yi had already reacted. There weren't many people who knew his name. Yang-yi sized up Chen Fengchen, who was dressed plainly, and asked tentatively, "Director Chen, is this old man Director Chen Fengchen?" Chen Fengchen smiled and said calmly, "Yes, I'm here to look for him." Before he arrived, Chen Fengchen was still a little worried. He didn't know what kind of temper Yang-e, the author, had. But now that he saw Murphy and knew that Yang-e was the husband of someone he knew, he was relieved. He felt that everything was more or less settled. Ah! Looking for Yang-e? This time, it was Murphy's turn to be surprised. Chen Fengchen didn't explain to Murphy. Instead, he raised his head and looked at Yang-e. He smiled and said, "Little brother Yang should know why I'm here. I'm sorry for the sudden visit. However, it's also because little brother Yang wrote well." Murphy was still a little confused. Yang-e sat down beside her and whispered in her ear, "Didn't I publish 2 books? He's here to buy the film rights. So that's why." Murphy understood. In an instant, she understood some of the details, including some of her words. She couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Since it was related to him, Yang-e didn't leave. He looked at the other party indifferently. Although he still used honorifics, his tone was neither servile nor overbearing as he said, "Yes, the publishing company has contacted me. However, I didn't expect that you would come personally. I was thinking of visiting you after this month when my daughter goes to kindergarten." "That's not necessary. I'm not that pedantic. Your books are indeed good. Give me a price. I want to buy both of them to film a TV series." Chen Fengchen waved his hand and went straight to the point. His straightforward manner couldn't be considered straightforward, but as a great director, his uncompromising aura was faintly revealed. If Murphy wasn't here, Yang-e could give a strong response because he wasn't happy with the other party's oppressive aura. But now that Murphy was here, Yang-e felt that it would be more troublesome to deal with it. He turned to look at Murphy and exchanged glances with her. "Will it affect you?" Murphy understood his meaning. Her heart felt warm, but she responded with a firm look. "Do as you wish. Don't mind me." Chapter 150. Murphy's response put Yang-e at ease. "Sir, you may not understand. I'm not from the entertainment industry, so I don't know much about how TV series are shot. However, I hope that my book can be made into a classic TV series, not a lousy one," Yang-e said with a smile. Chen Fengchen raised his eyebrows and said unhappily, "Are you saying that I'm a director who shoots lousy TV series?" "Director Chan is still very authoritative in the TV series industry," Murphy whispered to Yang-e. Yang-e gently patted Murphy's leg. Although there was a layer of cloth between them, the summer blouse was as thin as a cicada's wing. The plump elasticity was clearly reflected in his hand. "Of course not. I don't know much about it. That's why I watched some of your previous TV series a few days ago. I've shot a lot of military TV series. Yes, I can see that you're very good at shooting both war scenes and character dialogue scenes. You're able to shoot the rhythm just right and portray the character's emotions in great detail." Yang-e nodded. The only flaw is, Chen Fengchen did not expect a young brat to dare say that his TV series was flawed. He was a little upset, but he still chuckled and said, "Is that so? Tell me about it." "The war scenes are too fake. There are dozens of extras running back and forth. The so-called hail of bullets looks like burying a few strings of firecrackers in the ground and exploding them. The guns in their hands are also waving as if they've pulled the trigger. It's just a sound, but there's no movement." Yang-e pointed it out without hesitation. In his previous life, people called it the 50-cent special effects. Chen Fengchen was stunned for a moment and his face turned red. Yang-e was right. When he was shooting, he was not willing to invest more in the explosion effects. Instead, he was more willing to capture the details of the characters and close-ups of their faces. In other words, it was difficult to get the adrenaline to soar. Soldier's Assault is fine, but Drawing Sword won't be able to capture the feeling if there's not enough war scenes. Yang-e continued. Chen Fengchen wanted to say, "Why don't I just shoot Soldier's Assault?" He did not want Drawing Sword anymore. However, how could he bear to part with Drawing Sword? Just the thought of fighting the Japanese made his blood boil even at his age. Of course, Soldier's Assault was also to his liking. As long as it was shot with care, this TV series would not be too bad. Of course, it was impossible for him to shoot 2 TV series at the same time, but he did not want to give Drawing Sword to someone else either. Therefore, he could only buy both of them and shoot one a year. But the problem was, how could they satisfy Yang Yi's needs? Making special effects costs a lot of money. We're just filming a TV series. Chen Fengchen tried to complain, but at this moment, he had unknowingly fallen into a disadvantageous position. No matter how much money you burn, you still have to shoot a classic. If you can't find a suitable place to shoot in capital city, can't find enough excellent extras, and lack supplies, I can give you a suggestion. Come to Zhongqing to shoot in the Jiangnan military region. Their general has personally promised that if you want to shoot Drawing Sword and Soldier's Assault, they will fully support you if necessary. Yang Yi chuckled and said, with the support of a large military region, are you afraid that you won't be able to find a master of explosives? These words were indeed proposed by Old Master Qiu Weigua and the others. General Lu Pengju also nodded. You have such a deep relationship with the military? Chen Fengchen could not help but look at Yang Yi in a new light. He felt that Yang Yi's background was a bit unfathomable. He had married a big star as his wife and had a relationship with the general of the military region. Chen Fengchen could not help but misunderstand. Yang Yi was well aware of it, but he did not point it out. He even smiled slightly and said vaguely, I'm also a soldier after all. Since you have the support of the Jiangnan military region, I'll give up my old life and shoot a big war drama for you. Chen Fengchen gritted his teeth and said, not only that, I hope that Director Chen will choose the right actors. It doesn't matter if they're famous or not, but they must have an absolute passion for acting. They must also be able to portray the character's characteristics. For example, Su Sandua's naivety, or Li Yunlong's slyness and rudeness. Yang Yi said. Chen Fengchen was quite disdainful of Yang Yi's new request. He raised his head and said, Little brother Yang, it seems that you're underestimating me, Chen Fengchen. I, Chen Fengchen, am famous in the industry for being stubborn. No matter who the actor is, as long as I don't like them, they can forget about being used by me. That's true. Director Chen has a good reputation when it comes to selecting actors and training new actors, Murphy said to Yang Yi. All right then, old mister, please name a price. If you're suitable and satisfy the 2 reasons I mentioned before, then I'll give the copyright of these 2 books to you. It's not a problem. Yang Yi smiled slightly. Of course, I hope that old mister can film it as soon as possible. 4 years. If it's not finished by then, I have the right to take back the copyright. Chen Fengchen didn't really care about this issue. He originally wanted to buy it as soon as possible so that he could arrange for the filming. However, he was the one who asked Yang Yi for the price just now. Now that the ball was kicked back to him by Yang Yi, he had to think carefully before raising it. 5 million. 5 million for each book, plus a 6% share of the revenue, Chen Fengchen said. 5 million for the film copyright wasn't bad. It could be said that it was above average in the industry. As for the 6% share of the revenue, it needed to be considered. After all, it was usually 5% to 18%. 6% was only a little higher than the minimum standards set by the Copyright Association. Yang Yi didn't have the extravagant hope of getting 18%, unless his work was good enough and could complete the scriptwriter's work at the same time. Yang Yi didn't have the time to accompany Chen Fengchen to prepare the script. 5 million only includes the film copyright, but I want 15% of the revenue share. Yang Yi said firmly. How is that possible? Chen Fengchen jumped up in excitement. Even Lu Shuping didn't dare to ask for 15%. How is it possible for a new writer like you to ask for 15%? Lu Shuping was a well-known traditional writer in this world. His works had been adapted into several TV dramas, and they were all very popular. It could be said that he could get the highest share of the revenue he could get. He was the benchmark of the industry. However, when Chen Fengchen said that he couldn't get 15%, Yang Yi was reserved. Who knew if this old man was lying? Lu Shuping also didn't announce the details of his contract. So old Mr. doesn't have much confidence in my work. How about this, let's sign a bet. Yang Yi revealed his sincere smile again. If Chen Yijie was here, he would definitely tell Chen Fengchen that he would rather die than bet with Yang Yi. However, no one persuaded Chen Fengchen. He was even interested. Bet. Okay, tell me. Chapter 151. Mom, Little Guai, Little Gray, and Dondo, are they boys or girls? In the evening, after taking a shower, she wanted to see if the kittens were asleep. Murphy had no choice but to take her to the cat nest in the living room, but she was not allowed to reach out and touch them. The little guy looked at the 3 kittens who were tired and had fallen asleep early and tried to ask in a low voice. Little Gray is the older brother, Dondo is the older sister, and Little Guai is the younger brother. Murphy glanced at Yang Yi, who happened to pass by, and said with a smile. As she expected, the expression on Yang Yi's face was gloomy. So Little Guai is the younger brother. She pouted and defended Little Guai. But why do the older brother and sister bully Little Guai even though it is the youngest? How do they bully it? Murphy asked curiously. She felt that the 3 kittens were quite united and often played together. They even snuggled up to each other when they slept, as if hugging each other for warmth. Because they can fight, and Little Guai can't beat them. It's so pitiful. She complained to her mother. Then I took it out and didn't let it be bullied. Murphy understood. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry and rubbed her daughter's soft long hair. She said angrily, they are not bullying Little Guai. Cats playing with each other is their special little game. Only when they play can they learn all kinds of skills. Oh. She was so surprised that her little mouth formed an O shape. So in the future, don't disturb Little Guai when it plays with its brothers and sisters. Murphy said. She, you will go to kindergarten to play with other children in the future. You have to learn from each other. Of course, you can't fight. We are not kittens. Yes. She doesn't fight with children. Cici nodded longingly. She was quite looking forward to it. Scenes of playing with many children appeared in her mind. Of course, she didn't realize that when she went to kindergarten, her father wouldn't be with her. After she fell asleep, Murphy went to Yang Yi's study. Although she was wearing short-sleeved pajamas, every part of her body was buttoned up tightly and seamlessly. There was no danger of exposing her body. Of course, the aloof goddess on TV who had no makeup on and was dressed so casually sitting next to him was always somewhat attractive. However, Yang Yi was focused on drawing on his newly bought digital sketchpad and didn't have time to look up at her. What are you drawing? Murphy asked curiously. She saw that Yang Yi was drawing a man with his back facing her. His scalp was green as if he had just shaved his head. This man was tall and skinny. His face was fair and clean, but his body was covered with colorful and terrifying tattoos. Yang Yi was carefully drawing his tattoo. I'm drawing an illustration. It's an illustration for my new book, Yang Yi said casually. Why are all your books about strange things? Murphy curled her lips and said, I've read your first 2 books. They're quite normal. There were physical books for soldier assault and drawing sword at home. Of course, Murphy had flipped through them. She had even protested to Yang Yi about the female protagonist's constant death in drawing sword. Of course, the first 2 books were quite good. Although Murphy had no interest in military literature, she could still read them. However, the illustration for Yang Yi's new book made her feel uneasy. She couldn't bring herself to read it. It's a different theme, Yang Yi answered simply. The illustration was almost finished. Yang Yi sped up and drew the last few strokes before turning his head to chat with Murphy. Why did you negotiate such an unfair condition with Director Chen today? Murphy asked in confusion. If the ratings exceed 10%, you'll get a 7% share. If it exceeds 15%, you'll get 12%. If it's the annual ratings champion, you'll only get 16%. There's still hope for the first one. It's not difficult for director Chen's TV series to exceed 10%, but it's impossible for the latter too. Breaking 15% of the ratings was only possible if it was a famous work, right? As for the ratings champion, it was not only based on one's own results. It also depended on the opponent and the arrangement of the TV station. The right time, place, and people were indispensable. That's because I have confidence in my work. Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, even if I can't win, I think it can still exceed 15%. As long as director Chen works hard, these two shows have great potential. Drawing Sword was needless to say. The glorious results in his previous life were enough to prove it. As for Soldier's Assault, its broadcast results were average in his previous life, but that was not the reason. After all, not many people watched it on the TV stations that broadcast it. However, Yang Yi still believed that this series with good reviews should be able to achieve the results it deserved if it could be broadcast on Central TV in this life. Well, I think director Chen finds it unbelievable when he sees you. Murphy covered her mouth and laughed. I can't believe someone just said those words to him. That's too disgraceful. Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, I don't care what he thinks. I'm not in the entertainment industry, so there's no need for me to bow down to the so-called authority in your circle. If there's anything to say, I'll say it. For example, the explosion scene in his TV series isn't exciting enough. That's a flaw that needs to be fixed. I really don't understand what you men are thinking. What's so good about fighting and killing all day? Murphy snorted. By the way, do you know what made me happiest today? Yang Yi asked. Murphy was still unaware that Yang Yi had changed the topic. She asked in confusion, what was it? Did you sign a new contract and sell the film rights to make money? No. Yang Yi shook his head. Hurry up and say it. I hate people who keep others in suspense. Murphy said angrily. Yang Yi couldn't help but smile. He looked at Murphy and said, when you introduced me to Chen Fengchen today, you said I was your husband. Murphy's face instantly flushed red. She bit her lower lip and stared at Yang Yi with a hint of annoyance. He. Yang Yi was a little embarrassed by her stare and laughed foolishly. Who said you were my husband? Murphy refused to admit it. You said it. I heard it all. That was a temporary measure. I can't say you were a passerby, right? She was watching from the side. Murphy puffed up her cheeks and said angrily. That means you've accepted me in your heart. Yang Yi said. Accept your ass. Murphy turned her head and snorted. Why should I accept you? Just a cup of coffee? I'm still angry. Yang Yi had a headache. He couldn't figure out a woman's thoughts. He felt that Murphy's anger had mostly dissipated, but he didn't expect her to still be angry. Men didn't like this. They said everything directly. If they cared, they cared. If they didn't care, they could just turn around and let it go. Even if they were angry, they would have calmed down overnight. Women were still troublesome. Of course, Yang Yi was willing to stir up trouble. He had chosen the path himself. No matter how hard and tiring it was, he had to walk it. Murphy stood up and patted Yang Yi's shoulder coolly. Confucius said, there's still a long way to go. Yang Yi, you still need to continue working hard, do you understand? P.S. Actually, it was Zheng Zi who said that. Chapter 152. In Guangzhou, Mu Yuqing had not logged on to read his latest book for several days. His previous project was nearing the end stage and he was so busy that he barely had time to sleep, let alone pick up his phone to read novels. Today, the final testing work was finally completed. It could be said that everything was ready and waiting for the customer to check and accept it the day after tomorrow. Mu Yuqing only stayed behind with a few maintenance staff and gave the other brothers who had worked hard for more than half a month a day off. Of course, although he stayed in the company, he was also free and could read novels. I've collected dozens of chapters of Remaining Sins, right? This time I can read it to my heart's content. Mu Yuqing thought happily and put his legs on the desk. There were not many people in the project team anyway, so he could sit or lie down if he wanted to. However, in the next second, he almost fell out of his chair. What the hell? Mu Yuqing turned over and sat up straight with difficulty. He then growled in a low voice. He was stunned to see a new advertisement banner hanging on the webpage. Soldier Assault, Drawing Sword, Remaining Sins, author Yang Yi, new book Prison Break. See you on September 1st. This level of publicity was obviously enjoyed by a great author. Of course, Yang Yi had already enjoyed it long ago. Mu Yuqing was not surprised by this. However, Mu Yuqing found it hard to believe. I haven't read for a while. Is Remaining Sins finished? He quickly clicked on the page of Remaining Sins, but it was obvious that the book was still in a serialized state. Or was it about to end? Mu Yuqing did not believe it. Even if he had not read for several days, according to the direction of the plot, the book was definitely not ending yet. Fortunately, the book review section gave him an answer. Many readers had already exploded like Mu Yuqing. They were yelling and asking if Yu Zue was going to stop updating. If so, they quickly sent Yang Yi's address. They wanted to send razor blades or teddy bears to guarantee that Yang Yi could open a razor blade shop or a pet shop. Yang Yi naturally did not respond. It was Chiue's official notice that Remaining Sins would be updated as usual, and Prison Break was just Yang Yi's new stove. So this was the rhythm of a double opening? Mu Yuqing frowned. He didn't like authors who had a dual career. It was like a man who had a foot in both boats. If he wasn't focused, it would be harmful to both books. There was a manually pinned post in the book review section. It had already been refreshed tens of thousands of times. It was these readers who were anxiously asking the editors to read the book. They had to persuade Yang Yi to give up on this idea. Mu Yuqing sighed inwardly. He silently followed behind and signed in. He didn't know why, but after hearing this news, he suddenly felt bored. It was like a man's sage mode. He didn't even want to read novels anymore. However, just as he was about to close the book review section, a post caught his attention. Don't spout nonsense if you haven't seen it. I think Prison Break will be great. The person who posted the post urged everyone not to rush to comment on Prison Break. Go to its homepage first before commenting. Homepage. Have you created a homepage for it? Mu Yuqing thought about it and decided to open it. After all, he still had a firm understanding of Yang Yi's strength. Oh, what's this? After opening the homepage of Prison Break, Mu Yuqing couldn't help but take a deep breath. A colorful and messy tattoo came into view. It was just a half-length picture. It was obviously a man's tattoo, but it was densely packed with moms. It covered almost the entire body and even extended to her neck. The tattoo was made up of strange patterns. It looked like a Western church, gods, demons, and monsters, but Mu Yuqing obviously couldn't recognize it. It looks like an extremely evil person. So many tattoos. Scary. Mu Yuqing thought of the book's name and secretly decided on it. However, this promotional picture released by Chiue's official website wasn't that simple. Mu Yuqing noticed that the artist was Yang Yi. Yang Yi knows how to draw. Mu Yuqing was pleasantly surprised. So, this tattoo wasn't used for sensationalism? Maybe the pattern on it had a deeper meaning. Under the homepage, there were already many readers discussing this tattoo in the comment section. There were even fans who were trying to figure out where the gods, demons, and monsters on the tattoo belonged to. Unknowingly, Mu Yuqing already had a very high interest in this book. Forget it, let's open both. With young Dada's ability, he should be able to handle it. I'm looking forward to the exciting story of Prison Break. Escaping from prison? That's a pretty good theme. A book friend commented, expressing Mu Yuqing's thoughts at the moment. In Jiangqing, on the street outside a kindergarten, a burly car was parked outside. What do you have to see outside? Murphy's voice rang out in the car. She muttered to Yang Yi, can't we just go in and visit? Of course, you and she go in and take a look. I'll wait outside. She also leaned against the car window and looked around curiously. Mom, what are we looking at? Yang Yi had a different opinion. Just walk in directly and you won't see anything. What you see will be displayed by others. It's no different from what's on your flyer. In fact, we don't know how the children are taken care of by the teachers. Murphy admitted that Yang Yi's words made sense. She was puzzled and asked, "Then what should we do?" "I'll have to do it. You guys wait for me in the car." Yang Yi smiled, unbuckled his seat belt, and pushed the door open. Before Murphy could stop him, Yang Yi had already walked out. She quickly leaned against the car window to see what Yang Yi was going to do. She saw Yang Yi's figure disappear into a deserted alley. Just as Murphy was puzzled, she suddenly saw Yang Yi appear on the rooftop of someone's two-story building. How did he get up there? Mo Fei was dumbfounded. That tall and agile figure seemed to be doing parkour. In the blink of an eye, he had already jumped over several rooftops and arrived at the side of the kindergarten. With a leap, his figure disappeared again. This bastard! Murphy couldn't help but gritted her teeth and muttered. She remembered the time when she was suddenly stolen by Yang Yi. Obviously, it was with this skill that he did bad things. She turned her head doubtfully, looked at Mom, and then asked, "Mom, where did Papa go?" "He went to buy something for us." She pouted and unhappily said, "Papa didn't take she with him. He's so bad." Because she wants to accompany Mom. Mama is very scared in the car alone. Mo Fei comforted her. She suddenly forgot her unhappiness, quickly nodded, took her mother's hand and said, "Well, then she will accompany you." "Mom, don't be afraid." She is not afraid. After about a quarter of an hour, Yang Yi came back. His face was as usual, as if he was not the one who was jumping around on the roof just now. "This kindergarten is not good. The teachers are all sitting on the side and chatting. They let the children play with toys by themselves. They are not responsible at all." Yang Yi shook his head and said to Murphy, "Papa, what did you buy for us?" She stuck her head out and expectantly asked. "Ah." Yang Yi's head was full of question marks. Chapter 153. After a few days of in-depth visits, Yang Yi and Murphy finally chose Shishi's kindergarten to be on the other side of the mountain, which was a private kindergarten near the villa area where Yang Yi often went to buy vegetables. It was geared toward children from rich families, so naturally, the school conditions and relevant measures were better than those of ordinary kindergartens. Yang Yi was more satisfied with the strict management of the kindergarten teachers and the emphasis on the teachers' professional ethics. Mo Fei also agreed with this kind of kindergarten, because it could be seen from the brochure that although it did not set up those interest tutoring classes, it would invite some calligraphers, painters, musicians, and other professionals in the city to show the children almost every week, so that the children would be able to stimulate their inner interests in the play of artistic activities. Every month, the kindergarten would organize the children to learn and rehearse plays, both in Chinese and English. At the end of the semester, there would be a party where parents would be invited to participate and the children would perform and show their talents. This was very good. It was educational and fun, and she would not be burdened with heavy schoolwork at such a young age. Murphy and Yang Yi were very satisfied. After registering Murphy's most important task for this holiday had been accomplished, and the date of her return to work was gradually approaching. This made Murphy very unhappy. Why should I be mentally prepared to go back and prepare for the new album while Yang Yi, you big bastard, can still be lazy at home every day? Therefore, Yang Yi was forced by Murphy to open a shop downstairs. "You have to get busy before me, understand?" Murphy leaned against the bar counter and looked at Yang Yi, who was helplessly wiping the coffee cup over and over again, and snorted proudly. Yang Yi and his daughter looked at each other and smiled. He smiled helplessly. She, on the other hand, thought it was funny. She didn't understand that the small quarrel between her parents was also a form of fun, but she liked to see her father being bullied by her mother, just as sometimes she would bully her father. For example, once she suddenly jumped up with a quilt on her body, making threatening gestures. Her father was stunned for a moment, and then his face was full of fear. "Ha ha, Papa is scared." She laughed happily, but the little girl did not forget to run over and comfort her father. "Papa, don't be afraid. It's she." Since the shop was open, it was inevitable that there would be guests. Although there were few, it would not be good if Murphy's identity was exposed. Therefore, when there were guests coming in, Murphy would cleverly pull she to sit in the innermost booth, pretending that they were also guests. For example, now, she's eyes were the sharpest. She saw a few girls walking around the flower bed to the shop. She quickly ran over and said, Mom, let's run. There are a few aunties coming." Murphy and she quickly returned to their seats, where she's toys were. However, the guests this time were a few young and beautiful girls. Mo Fei couldn't help but sneak a peek outside and eavesdrop on them. Yang Yi still stood in his bar counter as usual, without any expression, and did not take the initiative to greet them. Several girls pushed the door open, but did not come in immediately. They just chattered at the door. "Is it here?" "It seems to be. Let's go in and have a look." "It's very strange to stand outside." So, they swarmed in, bright and beautiful faces. Murphy looked at them from afar and could not help but sigh. It's still good to be young. They were all young girls, but when they came in, they did not think about ordering coffee, but looked at Yang Yi unscrupulously. Yang Yi was a little scared by their stares. What do you want to drink?" Yang Yi finally opened his golden mouth. "Boss, is your shop called the Corner Coffee Shop?" After a burst of pushing, a girl with waist-length hair was pushed out, and she plucked up the courage to ask Yang Yi. Yes." Yang Yi paused and said, "We are a coffee shop." He also repeated, wanting them to make their purpose clear. "If you come to a coffee shop, you should drink coffee. Why are you looking at me?" Behind the girl with waist-length hair, several girls could not help but whisper. Not far away, Yang Yi could hear their conversation. "I think it's very possible. Look at this shop, there are a lot of records on the shelf. At first glance, you can tell that the boss is a person who likes music very much. Just because you like to listen to songs doesn't mean you can write songs, right? I also like to listen to songs. Why don't you see me writing songs? Just forget about it, okay?" "What do you mean forget about it? Look at the boss's appearance, big and rough. Look at me, who do you think is more similar between the two of us?" "Pfft, please spare me. You're a woman, he's a man. She's a tough woman." That was heart-wrenching. "Look at that piano, I think it's very possible. If you don't know music, who would put a piano in the shop? You don't know? Let me tell you, high-end coffee shops have pianos, and they even invite people to play them. It's very romantic." Okay, don't argue. Let's just ask." After a while of discussion, the girl with waist-length hair was pushed out again. She smiled at Yang Yi. This girl was quite good-looking. Her facial features were regular, and her skin was white and beautiful. She was probably used to using her smile to charm the little boys. But this trick was useless against Yang Yi. "Hello, are you the boss of this shop?" Yang Yi listened to their conversation. He was still confused, but he vaguely felt that something was wrong. But he did not care and nodded. "Then, are you Mu Xiong?" The girl with waist-length hair looked at Yang Yi expectantly and asked. Yang Yi finally realized that something was wrong, but he still firmly shook his head. Behind them, Murphy listened to their conversation and could not help but secretly laugh. They actually think that Yang Yi is Mu Xiong? How did they make the connection? Yes, Yang Yi also wanted to know. He calmly took down a record from the shelf behind him and said, "The Mu Xiong you are talking about, is he the songwriter of the song in this record? Why did you say that I am him?" "Boss, you also like his song? We are all fans of Chen Yijie. The song he wrote for Chen Yijie, Long Time No See, is really nice." A girl with dark red hair said with her eyes lit up. "Yesterday, Chan Yijie accidentally revealed that Mu Xiang opened a shop in Jiang City in a program. So we came to look for him. Boss, isn't the name of your shop the coffee shop on the street corner? So we guessed that it was you. So that was it. Yang Yi calmly shook his head and said, "How is that possible? I changed the signboard later. I like this song very much." Then, boss, is your surname Li? No, my surname is Yang. Mu Xiang, it seems that his name should be Liang. But his surname is Yang. Yang Yi's denial dispelled their suspicions. Originally, they did not think that Yang Yi was Mu Xiang. Although their faces were full of disappointment, the girls still politely bought coffee for takeout. When they left, they muttered, "I said that he doesn't look like him. Mu Xiang must be a handsome and thin young man, and there must be a story." Yang Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry and secretly shook his head. When he turned his head, he saw that Murphy was looking at him with shining eyes. Yang Yi could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. He thought that he had been exposed. Chapter 154. Murphy stared at Yang Yi, which made Yang Yi's hair stand on end. Well, they misunderstood because of the signboard. Yang Yi wanted to explain. However, Murphy shook her head. "It's really a misunderstanding." Yang Yi tried to explain. His heart was beating like a drum. He was already secretly thinking if he should admit it if Murphy continued to interrogate him. Anyway, he had already laid the groundwork and thought of an excuse. He just wanted to wait until Murphy released the album, so that she wouldn't feel burdened. However, Murphy shook her head and said, "I know you're not Mu Xiang. Isn't it obvious?" Then, she looked into Yang Yi's eyes and said, "I just realized that there are many girls who come to your shop to buy coffee." Perhaps it was because school was about to start, but there were several groups of customers in the coffee shop today. The ratio of girls was obviously higher than the ratio of boys. Moreover, they were basically young and beautiful girls. Yang Yi heard and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. So, they were discussing the gender of the customers. That was scary. It's normal to have many girls. This is Zhongqing Media University. It's famous for the imbalance between men and women. Except for some science colleges, there are more girls than boys, especially for the students in the arts. It's said that the ratio of girls to boys is shockingly 4:1. Yang Yi said with a smile. "Who wants to discuss the ratio of girls to girls with him?" Murphy rolled her eyes at him. She didn't want to talk to him, but she was still a little unwilling. "You're not allowed to sell cappuccino to them in the future." Murphy snorted and said, "And you're not allowed to have cappuccino on the menu." Cappuccino was one of the ways to drink coffee. However, in this world, there was no coffee mixed with Italian espresso, steam milk, and foam milk called cappuccino. Murphy heard Yang Yi say that his latte coffee was cappuccino, so she thought that the heart-shaped latte coffee was cappuccino. "I only sell original, handmade coffee here," Yang Yi reminded Murphy. "But why did you say that cappuccino is not allowed on the menu? I was wondering if I should buy a milk foam machine. Maybe some customers would order this type of coffee." "Don't sell it." Murphy looked at him angrily. "You can only sell your original coffee. You have to know how to refuse, okay?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Okay, I also want to stick to my principles." Mo Fei was almost amused by this unreliable guy. However, she still wanted more. "In the future, you're only allowed to make cappuccinos for me, do you understand?" "Sure, I can try a new shape next time." Yang Yi said excitedly, "There are many ways to play with it, such as making it into the shape of a leaf, or a palm tree. I want you to make me the one you made the other day, the heart-shaped one." Murphy pouted. She was furious. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. Looking at Murphy, he finally understood what they were talking about just now. In the capital, at the barbecue stall in Xiren village, Guazi was eating and drinking with his brothers who had drifted from Beijing. "Xiao Gua, let me give you a toast." A short, swarthy brother from the countryside stood up and said with a red face while holding a wine glass, "Although you are younger than me, I think I should call you Teacher Gua because I have learned a lot from you these days, and I have improved a lot." "Gung Sha, don't say that. Aren't we all learning from each other and improving each other?" Gua Zi quickly stood up with a wine glass. This was his farewell banquet. He was going back to Jiang City tomorrow and was about to report for school. Gua Zi wanted to treat his brothers to a good meal. It had been many years since he left, and he didn't know when they would meet again. Therefore, Gua Zi also drank a few glasses of beer. He didn't have much alcohol tolerance, so he was a little dizzy. Gung Sha spoke in his rustic Mandarin and said, "No, Teacher Gua, I have to thank you. Not only did I learn a lot from you, but you also praised us before you left and introduced us to Brother Bin and Director Ruan. These are all small things. I am also pushing the boat with the current. Whether you can seize the opportunity to have a meteoric rise or not, it still depends on your own efforts." Gua Zi said. "Are you done?" A few brothers began to kick up a fuss. "If you don't eat this barbecue, it will be eaten up by us." Gung Sha puffed out his chest, raised his glass respectfully, and said loudly, "I won't say much. I wish you a bright future, Teacher Gua, a good person, a peaceful life." With that, Gung Sha raised his head and finished the glass of beer. "Hey, just call me Xiao Gua," Gua Zi called out. He didn't hesitate and finished the beer with Gung Sha. At the same time, in a bar in Jiangqing's Tingshan district, it was crowded. Some young men and women were drinking, some were talking loudly, and of course, there were also people jumping in the middle of the dance floor. "Sorry, please make way." Ding Xiang was squeezed around in the crowd. She was thin and small like duckweed with no support. She was working part-time. A little sister introduced her to a daily job. Moreover, the bar only opened at night. It just so happened that she could miss the appointment with Senior Mao Peifu to welcome the newcomers. Of course, Ding Xiang wasn't working as a beer girl here. She was dark and thin, and her figure was flat. Even if she was asked to be a beer girl, she probably wouldn't be able to do it. She was holding a rag, a broom, and a trash spatula, shuttling back and forth in every corner of the bar, cleaning up the beer bottles, cups, cigarette butts, and other debris left behind by the customers who left. Perhaps there would also be small white umbrellas that would appear in dark corners that needed to be cleaned. At first, Ding Xiang was a little embarrassed, but later, she got used to it. That's right, Ding Xiang was doing the work of a cleaner. The money wasn't much, but she secretly calculated that if she worked hard for more than 10 days, she should be able to earn enough living expenses for September. This job wasn't easy at all. The main thing was that she had to shuttle through the crowd often, which was very tiring. When she was tired, Ding Xiang would also stand at the edge of the crowd and listen to the bar's resident singer on the stage sing. "I've let down too many people. Today, I've become a victim and treat you with sincerity." On the stage was a handsome young man. Apparently, his name was Lin Mu En. However, because he was singing a Cantonese song, it was difficult to resonate with the bar in Jiangqing. "Silly boy. Wishful thinking of finding a beautiful beginning, wanting you to see through this heart, but falling down is very ironic. Come and go, but still can't change the will of heaven." Actually, Ding Xiang couldn't understand it either, but she felt that Lin Mu An's singing was quite nice. His voice was just like his personality, clean, but with a hint of sadness that couldn't kill people. It was very infectious. This kind of guy, it was as if he was shrouded in a layer of fog, very attractive to girls. Ding Xiang was no exception. After all, she was also a girl. But it was just admiration. Ding Xiang looked at her gloves a little self-abashedly, but still turned to work. Another customer had left, and there was a table that needed her to clean up. Note 1. The lyrics of this song came from the real Hong Kong singer Zhou Baihao's "Silly Boy," pretending to exist in that world. Friends who are interested in Cantonese songs can listen to it. Chapter 155. Early in the morning, by the flower bed where butterflies were flying, Murphy leaned against the lush banyan tree and watched Yang Yi and her daughter practice kung fu with a faint smile. It was a bit inaccurate to say that they were practicing kung fu. It would be better to say that Yang Yi was teaching Shi how to wield a sword. As usual, Yang Yi asked Shi to do a few sets of lunging movements so that she could move her body. In the past, Yang Yi had planned to gradually increase Shi's exercise volume, but Murphy was worried that her daughter would be trained to be a tough woman, so she strictly forbade Yang Yi to let Shi train her muscles. However, when practicing kung fu, Shi's face was still quite serious. The little girl was wearing a pink short-sleeved shirt and shorts while practicing kung fu. Coupled with her serious expression, she was a bit cool. "Today, Dad will teach you a trick. It doesn't have any practical effect, but it's very beautiful." Yang Yi said, "Watch Dad perform it first." Shi watched very seriously, and Murphy also opened her eyes wide with interest. Yang Yi held the sword by his wrist and took a slight step forward. With the inertia of his waist, he began to wield the sword. Although the stainless steel sword had not yet been sharpened, it was still shining with silver light. When he waved it, it was as if the light connected into a line, and the line connected into a surface, like a blooming sword flower. "Amazing!" Murphy couldn't help but exclaim. She couldn't tell what was amazing about it, but from an aesthetic point of view, this kind of fancy trick was very attractive. She was the same. It was hard for her to resist beautiful things. Although the little girl still looked serious, she couldn't wait to clench her small fists and whispered, "I want to learn, Papa, I want to learn this." Yang Yi stopped. He smiled and put the sword aside, then twisted his wrist and said, "Come, Shi, exercise your wrists with Dad first." Although she longed to be able to wield a sword as well as her father, she had become much more patient after these days of training. She obediently exercised her wrists together with her father. On the other hand, Murphy playfully put her hands behind her back and strode over. Like a thief, she picked up Yang Yi's sword. She wanted to learn how to wield it, but the moment she lifted it, she felt a heavy weight. "Wow! It's so heavy!" Murphy exclaimed. She couldn't hold it with one hand, so she had to hold it with both hands. Hearing this, Shi looked over. The little girl proudly puffed out her chest and said, "Because Papa is strong, just like Sun Wukong. He needs to carry heavy weapons." Yang Yi took the iron sword from the disappointed Murphy. He smiled and said, "If you want to play, I'll get someone to beat you up later." "No need, no need." Murphy shook her head and said, "I don't have time to play. I'm about to start recording songs again." Well, she was about to go back to the company to prepare for the new album. For the sake of convenience, she naturally had to live in the house in the coastal area. Yang Yi was reluctant to part with her, but he still had to understand Murphy's hard work, so he didn't ask her to stay. Yang Yi shook his head, sorted out his thoughts, and then continued to explain to Shi, "Our move is called sword drawing flower. There are two kinds of it. One is wrist cutting flower, and the other is wrist lifting flower." Yang Yi and Shi each held a sword and stood face to face. Shi also imitated her father and raised the wooden sword in her hand. No matter which one, you have to pay attention to the gesture. Like this, clasp your two fingers tightly, but don't clasp too tightly. Keep your wrist and the sword flexible. "But Shi doesn't know how to turn it," the little girl pouted and said to her father. Yang Yi handed the sword to his left hand and held Shi's little hand with his right hand. He taught her, "Come on, follow Dad's movements. Take your time." In the wrist-cutting flower, the direction of the sword's rotation is from the outside down, in, and then out again. Under her father's hands-on guidance, Shi quickly formed a certain muscle memory and could slowly draw the sword a little. "I'm so tired. My hands are sore." She couldn't hold it for a while. After all, she was still a child. Murphy finally had value. She quickly took out Shi's milk bottle from the bag next to her and said, "If you're tired, take a rest. Girls shouldn't be in a hurry to learn these rough things. Take your time. Drink some soy milk first." With Murphy spoiling her, Yang Yi had no choice but to stand aside with his sword. He also spoiled his daughter, but when Shi practiced martial arts with him alone, she was not so delicate. After learning for less than 5 minutes, the rest time was even longer. She felt that she had rested enough. The little girl grabbed her little wooden sword and skipped over to her father to continue learning. Your hands are sore from practicing just now. The problem is that your way of exerting force is wrong. You have to make full use of your waist to reduce the burden on your wrist. Yang Yi patted his waist with his left hand and gestured to Shi while drawing the sword a little to demonstrate. Yang Yi stopped and gestured to Shi. Try it yourself. Find the frequency and feeling of your waist rotation. The little girl was indeed talented. She could still remember the movement of cutting the flower, and she didn't even need her father to describe it in detail. She twisted her thin waist left and right and gradually found a little feeling. Not bad. You can speed up a little. Yang Yi gave her a look of appreciation. The little girl who was praised by her father immediately showed joy on her face and became more energetic. Let's try to lift the flower. This is the opposite of cutting the flower. It's from the inside out. Yang Yi did the same as before. He first demonstrated and then taught his daughter step by step. She learned very quickly. After a while, she was very proficient in both movements. Okay, it's almost time to go back and have breakfast. Murphy still cared about her daughter and didn't let Yang Yi teach her anymore. Okay then. We'll continue to learn the movements tomorrow. Yang Yi put away the sword and said to Shi with a fist salute. Yes. Shi also held the sword upside down and saluted her father with a fist salute. Shi's figure was taller than her peers. Now that she was mature, she not only looked cool, but also looked like a beautiful girl. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. She held Shi's hand and said softly, "Our Shi is smart, right? Your papa has already told Mama that Cici learns things very quickly. Mom is very happy." He. The little girl was now like a 4-year-old girl. She snuggled in her mother's arms and smiled a little embarrassedly. But Mom doesn't want Shi to be like Papa and only know how to be fierce. She has to be a good girl. Learn to play the piano and sing like Mom, okay? Murphy took the opportunity to say. Yang Yi, who was following behind, smiled helplessly. He wasn't very fierce. It was just that he lost control of his emotions that he was fierce to Murphy once. Usually, although he wasn't a mature man who knew how to coax people, he was at least a gentle and good man. Yes. She also likes to play the piano. She nodded in response. The 3 people bathed in the morning sun, walked through the path filled with the fragrance of flowers, and walked home. Chapter 156. At the end of August, Murphy still had to leave. In the bedroom, Yang Yi helped Murphy fold her clothes and neatly put them in the suitcase. The two of them buried their heads in their work and didn't say a word. Mama, when are you coming back? Cici reluctantly followed behind her mother, as if she was a follower, blindly following her every step. Mom has to go back to take care of some things. She'll be back in a while. She'll definitely send Shi to kindergarten. Murphy turned around and hugged her daughter. This time, the main reason she went back was to explain to Sister Ling about the new album. They had already prepared 12 songs. It was time for Sister Ling to fulfill her promise and put the preparation of Murphy's new album at the highest level of priority. If they started preparing for the new album, Murphy wouldn't need to rush to various cities and reduce the number of commercial performances and announcements. Then Mom, don't leave when you come back in the future, okay? She doesn't want you to leave. The little girl pursed her lips and said aggrievedly. Thinking that her mother wasn't by her side, she felt very uncomfortable and her big eyes began to fill with tears. Murphy subconsciously glanced at Yang Yi. This blockhead was still lowering his head and helping her pack without saying a word. She pursed her lips and continued to comfort Shi. No matter how reluctant they were, they still had to leave. Mo Xiaozhuan's car arrived downstairs early. Murphy carried Shi and Yang Yi followed behind with the suitcase. The two of them were silent as if they had returned to the past. But in fact, they didn't. Because when they looked at each other, their eyes didn't have the indifference of the past. They just hid their reluctance and only wanted the other to see their strength. Brother-in-law, it's not a life and death separation. Don't worry, I'll take good care of my sister. Mo Shawan opened the trunk and said with a smile. Murphy and her daughter were like a couple who were about to part. They were reluctant to part with each other, and it was difficult for them to say goodbye. Murphy made countless promises and finally managed to coax She. Finally, before getting into the car, Murphy couldn't hold it in any longer. She pouted and walked up to Yang Yi. She lightly kicked the tip of Yang Yi's shoe. Hey, big blockhead, don't you have anything to say to me? Yang Yi scratched his head and pondered for a moment before saying, Take care of yourself. Don't tire yourself out. These concerns made Murphy feel warm in her heart, but she still felt that it was not enough. Of course, Murphy understood Yang Yi's personality and did not force him. Murphy stretched out her hand and pulled out Yang Yi's collar, which he had not spread out properly today, and gently folded it. Then I'm leaving, Murphy said, but she still couldn't help but remind him, take good care of She at home. Also, bathe the cats more often. Feed them cat food and water on time. Don't forget. Yang Yi nodded. Mo Shawan was in the driver's seat. She rolled down the window and looked at the two guys with great interest. There was a smile in her eyes. Also, don't be a womanizer. Keep a distance from those girls, Murphy said with her head lowered and gently bit her lower lip. After saying that, she felt embarrassed and wanted to turn around and leave. But suddenly, her hand was pulled. It was pulled by a warm, rough hand. Yang Yi pulled Murphy and looked at her. After a few seconds, he took out an envelope from his trouser pocket and gently placed it in Murphy's hand. What's this? Murphy felt that her brain was a little short of oxygen at that moment. Yang Yi let go of her hand and scratched his head a little embarrassedly. A letter. You can read it when you get back. Murphy forgot how she got into the car. She forgot if she had said goodbye to She and Yang Yi. Anyway, in the front passenger seat, she sat in a daze and looked at the envelope in her hand. Are you serious? Sis, why are you so useless? Brother-in-law wrote you a love letter and you're so happy that you're confused? Have you never received a love letter before? Mo Xiaojuan's teasing made Murphy come back to her senses. Who said I haven't? You little girl, just focus on driving. Mo Fei blushed and said angrily. She had been beautiful since she was young. She did receive a lot of love letters, but because she debuted at a very young age, she didn't spend much time in school. The love letters she received were basically cleared by her agent at the time. Besides, how could other people's love letters be compared to Yang Yi's? While waiting for the traffic light, Mo Shaowan looked over excitedly and said, Look, sis, look at what brother-in-law wrote. Murphy quickly took the envelope in her hand and said, What? I'm not going to show it to you. Do you have to be so mysterious? Mo Shaowan pursed her lips and snorted. She said, But I can't stand you guys. Each of you is more stubborn than the other. You obviously like each other, but you're not willing to take the initiative to confess. No way, Murphy subconsciously retorted. She then lowered her voice and said, How can a woman speak first? I think brother-in-law won't speak either. With his personality. Mo Shaowan couldn't help but shake her head. I really can't stand it. He's more wooden than a block of wood. How can he be more romantic than Mu Zi-ong? His love songs are so good. I can guarantee that there's nothing mushy in the letter brother-in-law wrote to you. Being a block of wood also has its benefits. Why does he have to be so mushy? Besides, Murphy couldn't help but want to refute for Yang Yi. She wanted to tell Mo Shaowan about the series of mushy things that Yang Yi did after he said that he wanted to pursue her. However, Murphy was afraid that it was really like what Mo Shaowan said. What if what Yang Yi said in the letter was just ordinary things? Wouldn't that be very embarrassing? Murphy couldn't help but open the letter, wanting to see what was inside. However, When she took out the white letter and opened it, Murphy couldn't help but be stunned. She stared at it blankly for a long time. "What's written?" Mo Shaowan stopped at a traffic light and asked. Murphy's face was red. She hesitated for a moment, but still handed the letter to Mo Shaowan. She felt a little proud. Although she tried her best to hide it, the corners of her mouth still curled up slightly. Mo Shaowan took it and looked. It's a poem. Brother-in-law can write poems? She casually read it out. As long as we love each other once. If we never meet, perhaps our hearts will never be heavy. If we really miss the opportunity, I am afraid our whole life won't be easy. One look is enough to make the heart sweep past a hurricane on the barren land. Understand the scenery more deeply once on a long journey is enough to haggle a frail heart. Every time I look at the autumn waters, I wish I could tear up. How can death not be unhurried? How can love be indifferent as long as we love each other once is a life with no regrets. This poem, Only Loved Each Other Once, was written by Yang Yi's previous life's famous poet, painter, Wang Guozhen. However, Yang Yi didn't copy the entire second half of the poem. He only copied the positive part of the first half. When Mo Shaowan read the poem, it was like plain water, plain and tasteless. It also didn't reflect the charm of the poem. But it didn't matter. On the letter, Yang Yi's simple and elegant small handwriting had already vividly reflected the delicate feelings of the poem. "Oh my God, brother-in-law really wrote a love letter, and it's a love poem," Mo Shaowan exclaimed after reading it. Murphy wanted to laugh, but she didn't want to appear too complacent. She pursed her lips and pretended not to care. "It's just a poem, what's so strange about it? I won't be so easily tricked by a poem." "Just a poem? Umph. Now you get those boys who only know how to send flowers and say mushy words. Let's see who's better than my brother-in-law?" Mo Shaowan changed sides. "As long as we love each other once, it's a life with no regrets." Mo Shaowan repeated the last sentence. She couldn't help but curl her lips. I take back what I said just now. Brother-in-law isn't a blockhead, he's so mushy." All right. Stop reading, it's time to drive." Murphy snatched the letter back, carefully folded it and put it back into the envelope. She then carefully put it into her bag, afraid that she would break it. "Have you eaten breakfast? If you haven't, I'll call Auntie Zhu and ask her to prepare some porridge for you." "I'm not eating." Mo Shaowan drove the car and said weakly, "I'm full from your PDA." Chapter 157. The freshmen had to undergo military training, so they had to report earlier than the seniors. On this day, the banners and colorful flags of Jiangqing Media University were fluttering in the wind. The welcoming teams of the various faculties were wearing different colored vests as they gathered with the freshmen and their parents who were full of joy. It was very lively. However, the territory of the School of Business Media was much quieter. After all, they were a small faculty and only had two specializations: electronic media and e-commerce. The Film Academy is still better. "Look, there are reporters taking photos." A guy sighed and complained under the tent of the School of Business Media. "That's because they have many celebrities. Some are celebrities who got in, and some are future superstars." A girl next to him pouted. She had put on light makeup today, but it was obviously difficult to attract the attention of others. There were many beauties in the Film Academy, and each one was prettier than the other. Long legs, thin waists, oval faces, cherry lips, a perky nose, and large eyes. Looking at them once, they would be intoxicated. Looking at them twice, they would fall in love. Every beauty that came to report had killed many reporters. The guys were also excitedly sneaking glances and commenting in low voices. "Hey, this one is good. She has good legs. I think she can play with them for a year. What's the use of long legs? I think this one is better. Delicate and exquisite, big eyes. So cute that I want to pinch them." The girl next to him heard and couldn't help but pout. "What's so great about big eyes? How many of them are really big? Isn't it the effect of wearing contact lenses?" At this moment, the person in charge for the day, Mao Peifu, finally rushed over. She clapped her hands and said, Okay, don't just look. Let's get to work. Da Ching, get someone to go with you to the logistics department and move our water over. Don't really move it. There's a trolley. Borrow one. Lin, you and Xiaoye stay in the base camp on the boat. Register the freshmen and distribute the supplies. Then arrange for the guys to lead the way to the dormitory. Alright, remember to remind them to do a physical examination. Ding Xiang, and those who had a meeting with us yesterday, follow me. We'll split up according to last night's arrangement and go to the 2 school gates to pick up the new students. Mao Peifu commanded in a clean and efficient manner. She was majestic and full of aura. Oh, okay. Ding Xiang was the most diligent. She took the lead and picked up a few big signs. The school gate was not as comfortable as the base camp. There was no shade and no place to sit. After a while, a few boys were crying and complaining because of the sun. Hey, can you guys act like men? Do you see how many students our Ding Xiang has received? Each one of you is more lazy than the other. Are you going to shrink back to school if I'm not here? Mao Peifu said snappily. Hee, Sister Peifu, Ding Xiang is used to the sun. Look at how dark she is. A guy said shamelessly. Ding Xiang will send the next student to the base camp and dormitory. You guys, switch places with her. Mao Peifu said fiercely. Ah. Immediately, a wave of cries and shouts rang out. They did not want to stay at the school gate. After sending the students in, they could be lazy. In the middle, they could drink some water in the base camp and sit in the dormitory for a while. This was better than being stared at by Mao Peifu at the school gate. Ding Xiang just turned around. When she heard this, she quickly said, Senior sister, it's okay. What do you mean it's okay? Listen to my arrangements. These guys, let them suffer. Mao Peifu pulled Ding Xiang and said with heartache, Now the men in this world are useless. They don't see themselves as men and still use women as men. The boys beside her smiled bitterly and did not dare to refute. There was no choice. Mao Peifu was pretty. Although she could not be compared to the stars in the film school, she could be said to be the school flower in the School of Business and Media. Although her temper was not good, being beautiful was the truth. While they were talking, a sweaty little fatty dragged a large suitcase, a computer bag, and a large luggage bag as he struggled to get off the bus. After looking around for a while, he saw Mao Peifu's sign. His eyes lit up and he quickly dragged all his things over while panting. Hi, here, I am. You're from the School of Business and Media? Ding Xiang asked. Yes. After half a month of floating in Beijing, Guazhi did not lose weight, but he was tanned a lot. His original 16-year-old face now looked a lot more mature. I'm from that electronic media major. Just in time. Mao Peifu smiled. Ding Xiang, your direct junior brother. Come, give me your sign. Quickly send him over. Senior sister. Ding Xiang could not win against Mao Peifu and her sign was snatched away, but Mao Peifu also casually gave it to a guy with a bitter face. Guazhi was a little confused. He felt a little wronged. Is it necessary? Am I that ugly? In any case, I have the face of a star in the fat world. Guazhi thought Ding Xiang despised him. Alright, let's go to the base camp. I'll bring you to report first. Ding Xiang finally obeyed the arrangement. She walked in front of Guazhi and smiled at him, revealing her white and neat teeth. Okay. How should I address you, senior sister? Guazhi was big-hearted and fat, so he did not mind at all. He put the luggage bag on top of the suitcase and prepared to push it. However, the luggage bag was too big. Once he pushed the suitcase, it twisted and fell. I'm Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang reached out and took the luggage bag, holding it in her hands. Hey, senior sister, I'll carry this. Guazhi was too embarrassed to let a girl carry it for him, so he quickly snatched it. Now, the suitcase fell to the ground. The little fatty stood there stupidly, so awkward. Pfft. Ding Xiang laughed. She did not have the habit of covering her mouth, so she smiled very brightly. All right, I can help you carry it. I'm used to working since I was young, unlike you kids in the city. All right then. Guazi could only drag the suitcase and walk with Ding Xiang. Senior sister, are you the Ding Xiang from Lilac Flower? No, it's Xiang from Xiang Province. I'm from there. Oh. Senior sister, are you from the Miao tribe? I know there are many villages in Xiang Province. Yeah, I grew up in the Miao village since I was young. Hee hee, then do you know how to release goo? I heard that when a Miao woman falls in love with someone, she will release goo. If he abandons her, then the goo will help her take revenge. Luckily, they arrived at the base camp in a short while. Otherwise, Guazi might have been smashed flat by Ding Xiang's bags on the road. With the current sun, it might be cooked in a short while. The egg would be cooked. Electronic Media Major, sign in here to collect your information, Ding Xiang said. Just as Guazi was reporting, there was a commotion at the film academy. A handsome boy was surrounded by classmates, teachers, and even reporters as he was escorted to the reporting area. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.